I know it's very exciting to be at the Glendale City Council meeting, but we need to get started and have it a little quiet so everyone can hear us. Welcome to the October 14th, 2014 meeting of the Glendale City Council. Mayor Sinanian is out of town today, and I am the Mayor Pro Tem, and I will be chairing the meeting. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Devine.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Sinanian. Mayor Pro Tem Najarian.
Here. Councilmember Weaver, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Please join with me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for today's invocation. As we gather here today as residents and leaders, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our services to fellow citizens and to our community, keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. Amen.
May we have your report, please?
The agenda for October 14, 2014 regular meeting of Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, October 9th, 2014 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item.
Under presentations and appointments, 3A, agenda preview for meetings of Tuesday, October 21st, 2014.
Thank you. Ms. Pierce.
Mayor Pro Tem Najarian, members of the City Council, for October 21st in the afternoon, we have a special meeting of the Glendale City Council, and that is Director of Community Development. This is regarding the DSP, Downtown Specific Plan and Mobility Plan. That afternoon, we don't have any business agenda items for the Housing Authority. That evening, for the council meeting to commence at 6 p.m., we have a few items under consent. General Manager of Glendale Water and Power, Utility Street Repair Project. General Manager of Glendale Water and Power. This is regarding the Beaudry Terrace area water main replacement. Fire Chief, acceptance of funds from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security 2013 State Homeland Security Grant Program. Chief of Police, this is regarding medical services for arrestees and prisoners. We have one item under adoption of ordinances. This is an ordinance amending certain sections of the GMC regarding compliance with the Subdivision Map Act. For financing of city and or housing authority funded projects. We have a few items under action. City Attorney, this is regarding campaign finance ordinance. General Manager of Glendale Water and Power, prefabricated panels of composite materials required to reinforce one underground electrical vault. City Manager, anti-bullying resolution. And City Manager, this is a JPA amendments for the San Fernando Valley COG. And that concludes my report.
And this may be a good opportunity, Ms. Beers, to remind everyone about a meeting that we're having on Thursday, and that does have an agenda also.
That does. This Thursday, we do have a City Hall in Your Neighborhood meeting that will be at Pacific Community Center to commence at 6 p.m. And it will go until about 9 o'clock, and we have a number of items that we have on the agenda for discussion. Staff will be present as well as the City Council to be able to have a conversation with the community.
Okay, and a full list of those agenda items are available on our website?
On our website, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
3B, proclamation designating the month of October 2014 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Thank you. And who's present to receive this? Our Commission on the Status of Women members. Chair. Let me read the proclamation issued by the mayor, and then I'll ask a council member to bring it down. Whereas domestic violence is a serious crime that affects over 4 million Americans of all races, ages, gender, and income levels each year, and whereas 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in her lifetime, and whereas children that grow up in violent homes are believed to be abused and neglected at a rate higher than the national average, and boys who witness domestic violence are twice as likely to abuse their own partners and children when they become adults. And whereas domestic violence costs the nation billions of dollars annually in medical expenses, police and court costs, shelters, foster care, sick leave, and inflicts untold emotional trauma to the entire family. And whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides an excellent opportunity for citizens to learn more about preventing domestic violence and to show support for the numerous organizations and individuals who provide critical advocacy services and assistance to victims. Now, therefore, Zare Sinanyan, the mayor of the city of Glendale, proclaims the month of October 2014 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Well, Paula, since she's just off the commission, probably should.
We can have a reunion.
Yes, we could.
She's done a lot of work in this area, so it's only fitting.
Perhaps you'd come down too.
Sure.
Why not? Thank you so much, Paula. That is fabulous. Stay with us.
Oh, okay.
Sure, why not? And you stay with us too.
Thanks for all the work you're doing.
Mayor Pro Tem Najarian and Council, two of whom are right here. The Commission on the Status of Women is grateful that we have a council that strongly supports women's issues. We thank you for the proclamation naming October Domestic Violence Month. And if we look up here, the YMCA on the 23rd of October is holding a candlelight vigil to remember victims and survivors. It's always nice to have survivors also, but we will be remembering everyone at 5 o'clock at the Y, and we invite you all to attend. Thank you. Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
I'd just like to, may I? Mayor Pro Tem, I just want to, as a past member of the Commission on the Status of Women, I want to congratulate Linda Burns as their new chair and Denise Miller as their vice chair. Thank you, Seda Kajayan, for being here tonight. It was a pleasure working with all of you, and I wish you much success on your new path.
Thank you. Next, well, let's have a round of applause. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Presentation by Director Alina Der Sarkisian and Sharon Feinberg, RN of Glendale Adventist Medical Center for 2014 Army of Pink Breast Cancer Awareness Campaign.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to present on the Army of Pink for Glendale Adventist Medical Center. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and GAMC is proud to gather an army of candidates from the city of Glendale to help promote the importance of early screening and education to prevent breast cancer. Elisa Glickman, CEO of Glendale Arts, is our fearless female captain this year who is promoting the entire Army of Pink as well as the breast cancer message. I would like to thank our candidates for 2014. Scott Ochoa, Glendale City Manager, Tim Feely, Glendale Police Department, Greg Fish, Glendale Fire Department, Greg Krikorian, President, Board of Education, Glendale Unified School District, Dr. Harlan Gibbs from the Glendale Adventist Emergency Department, and Archbishop Hovnan Derderian, Western Diocese Armenian Church. The campaign also has an online voting process, so we encourage you to go to glendaleadventist.com and vote for your favorite candidate. On our website, you can learn more about our candidates as well as watch their own personal video with their own personal message on breast cancer. We also want to encourage you to attend the Alex Theater on October 26th for the Laugh for a Cause Comedy Night. And this event will be the final night of voting for our candidates as well as to help our cancer center. So all proceeds will benefit the Glendale Adventist Cancer Center. Now I'd like to introduce our GAMC nurse navigator from our cancer center, Sharon Feinberg, who will speak more about our services.
Hi, good evening. As you know, or may not know, the Glendale Adventist Cancer Center was the recipient of the American College of Surgeons Outstanding Achievement Award for community cancer centers. We were one of 2 hospitals to receive this esteemed recommendation or accommodation in LA County. We have numerous free classes and services available not only to our patients, but patients who have cancer and are treated out in the community. We have knitting, yoga, fitness, art classes. We have a Look Good, Feel Better program in collaboration with the American Cancer Society. They have trained volunteers who work with patients to work on skin changes, hair, makeup. They get a special kit that they can take home with them and just feel good about themselves. We have 3 support groups that are led by our licensed marriage and family therapist, Cynthia Klinger. She also offers individual and group counseling, and these are all free at no charge to our patients or their families. We have chair yoga. We have a fitness class at the Therapy and Wellness Center across from the Eagle Rock Plaza. And also for the month of October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we're offering low-cost mammograms for $50 to women who have no insurance or at least 40 years of age or older and do not have breast implants. And so as not to include our gentlemen friends, we are offering prostate screening this week on Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30, and so you can get a blood PSA and a prostate exam for $10. So our number is 409-8100 if you'd like to make a reservation. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, can I ask a quick question?
Can we put you down for 9 o'clock, Mr. Ochoa?
I think I got a thing that I got to do, but
We can make an accommodation for you.
but we digress. Do we know right now who's in the lead? Because last I heard that absent a wacky cowboy hat, a stethoscope, a police dog, a fire truck, or the big guy upstairs, I think my accomplice here and I are pretty much in the lead.
You guys are doing really well. You're in second place.
What?
Right? Right after Tim Feely. So you're doing really well.
Oh my!
You have over
goodness.
2,500 votes right now.
Wow.
All right.
Good job.
Yeah, I just...
What's going on?
It's that dog. Dog is what's
Councilmember Devine?
Mr. Cho, I guess you need a dog. You have to get a German Shepherd to take around.
Yeah,
with
we're
you.
working on that right now. We got
Working on
3
that
little
one
ones.
right now.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to comment on the program. I think I love the Army of Pink and the awareness that it raises in the community and how it brings so many people together. And I know Councilwoman Friedman and I were both the captains of these teams, and I still remember my slogan was, "A cure would be divine." And wouldn't that be divine? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
3D, presentation by Executive Director Sharon Townsend of Glendale Healthy Kids on Glendale's Mental Health Coalition.
Ms. Townsend, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Townsend with Glendale Healthy Kids. Approximately 9 months ago, one of the school psychologists who knew me personally called me to get help for one of her families. The mother and an 8- and 6-year-old daughter had found their father dead on the kitchen floor. Knowing we service children, the psychologist asked if we could help in placing the 8-year-old in counseling. She then stated, "I know you know everyone, and Glendale Healthy Kids just helps children, but could you please recommend where I could get help for the mother? And by the way, the 6-year-old is in ballet. Do you know anyone that might be able to help financially in helping her to continue with her ballet lessons?" With an hour of hanging up, I was able to contact Glendale Memorial Hospital and get the mother in grief counseling, contact Foothill Family Services to place the 8-year-old in counseling, and then contacted Edna Karinsky at the Community Foundation of the Verdugos to find if there was a way to fund the ballet lessons. The light turned on. For the past year, Glendale Healthy Kids has worked diligently with Senator Carol Liu's office and her staff in the research and the formation of a mental health coalition. If you Google mental health coalitions, you will come up with only one model in the entire United States. It's based in Nebraska, and it's the Mental Health and Addiction Advocacy Coalition, which began in 2003 with only 30 members. Today it has 105 members and is now a statewide coalition affecting policy change and impacting the lives of the people in their community. On September 25th, more than 40 stakeholders representing the school district, GCC, the city of Glendale, police and fire, the 3 hospitals, Foothill Family Services, D.D. Hirsch, Ascensia, NBC Bloomingdale's, Department of Public Health, Pacific Clinics, UCLA, private practitioners renowned in their field and specialties in suicide, the Flora Family Foundation, Glendale Healthy Kids board members, the PTA, and more gathered at Verdugo Hills Hospital to hear Senator Carol Liu show the Senate's commitment to mental health. In addition, we were more than privileged to hear from the twin 17-year-old daughters of our own Deputy Fire Chief, Greg Fish. They happened to be students at CV when the student jumped, and they shared their experiences. They shared what they saw. They shared seeing the body. They shared seeing the pool of blood. They talked about the reaction of the students and the teachers. In addition, Dr. Kelly King was there, the Assistant Superintendent of Schools. She was able to provide the school's reaction and response. During this talk with Kelly and Megan, we also found out their own cousin had committed suicide a year ago. The girls shared the prevalence of suicide today, the daily postings on Twitter and Facebook, the cutting that is now taking place as early as elementary school. In fact, they showed the incidences of going on a Cheers team overnight team building weekend experience where one of the girls brought knives and cut herself in the hotel. The girls talked of their own parents' involvement in their life and how their parents are actually parents and check their phones every day, check their social media, check their Facebook's accounts, and initially how angry they were at their parents, but realized that one of the issues today are their parents are becoming more like friends and not like parents. The message from these girls, be involved, know what your child is doing, and spend time with them. Just spend time. The message I heard in private from the girls, Kelly and Megan, we are just too young to deal with this much suicide at this age. Following the interview with Kelly and Megan, the group broke down into 3 groups working on our strategic plan and our business model of policy, treatment, and communication. We all know that the core functions of public health are assessment, policy development, and assurance. Assessment in order to figure out what the important health problem is, policy development and deciding what to do, and the assurance that it must be done well or making sure that somebody else is doing it well. Public health generally offers services to the whole population in all of its glorious diversity, ethnicity, diversity in culture, income, education, and employment. But providing services to all these people means an understanding of the demographic, social, and environmental circumstances of their lives, their cultural beliefs, and the values regarding health, utilizing effective ways of communicating with them. Following Darrell Steinberg's visit to our school district this past fall, we were all charged with finding an effective way to navigate the system and bring about change, healing, and help for our students, our parents, our teachers, and our community. The business model of Glendale Healthy Kids works. We've been able to gather professionals in the healthcare and provide access to our own children in this community, providing services for nearly 20,000 children during the last 20 years where need is helped at the most. The Mental Health Coalition is bringing together experts in the field of mental health, suicide, and depression in an effort to create a unified force in dealing with the suicide contagion that's taking place in our own community and the mental health issues that are taking place on a daily basis, often that we don't know about. We're very fortunate, I feel, to live in Glendale where we have a lot of strong nonprofits working together to bring about change. I believe we can make a difference, but it does take working outside of silos to do this, and thus the coalition. I don't know about you, but the recent passing of Robin Williams really unsettled me. Another bright star, someone that was loved world over by an adult, but yet he should have had those coping skills, but yet he chose to die alone by his own hand. What do our children do that don't have the coping skills as an adult? We know depression is still the most common mental health disorder in the United States among teens and adults. Our next meeting will take place on October 30th at 6 o'clock at Glendale Adventist Medical Center, and we're going to hear from 2 experts in the field of mental health and specifically suicide. Continuing meetings on a monthly basis will feature themes such as bullying, parenting, social media awareness, and more. I do welcome the community to attend the future meetings, and I hope you'll join me in bringing the issue of mental health out of the closet into the public arena and allowing us to talk about it. When you break your arm, it's obvious, but when you break your mind and it's broken, it's hidden. I'd like to share something that Anthony Portantito shared with me, and as you might know, his own brother committed suicide. These are his words. When your 52-year-old brother texts you from the roof of a 6-story building moments before he jumps to his death, it gives you license to comment on the subjects of depression and suicide. In fact, since learning about Robin Williams' death, I felt a growing responsibility to do so. I feel responsible to share that I'm angry and I'm frustrated because our current system of dealing with depression and mental illness is awful. How many more brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters, teenagers, and adults will we lose before depression and mental illness are understood and treated properly? I hope you'll join me in helping us bring together these wonderful organizations so we can work together for the good, not work in silos, but provide access to all the experts in the field and deal with this urgency that's in our community. On another issue, you have a card before you. One way that you can support Glendale Healthy Kids is by attending our Guess Who event coming up, leading to our 20th birthday celebration. We are 20 years old this year, and I'm proud of that. Thank you very much.
Sharon? Question. First, thank you so much for giving us this presentation.
You're welcome.
And for helping to facilitate this new group. It's clearly, unfortunately, something that's needed in this community, and I'm glad that we're addressing it and not sweeping it under the rug, that we're talking about it and trying to take action. My question is the task force going to have any sort of list of resources locally that parents can turn to or people can turn to?
Yes.
I think it would be great for us to have a link from our website, something that's easy to find, where either we can link to you or we can repost the same resources so that people know that if they're troubled, even if they can't afford it, there are places that they can turn, like Dee Dee Hirsch, and that if they have a child who they think is depressed, that there are places for them, to find.
We're trying to bring together a wide wealth of culture diversity in those resources. And just to share with you that our own city manager has been working with me from the beginning of this coalition. I know he believes in it strongly and is partnering with us to bring about change in this city and to have you be a part of that change.
I'm so glad to hear.
Yeah, thank you. And another I should have brought up, it will be an all-age coalition. It's not just children. Someone had brought that up. It will be all ages.
Terrific. Thanks for doing this work.
Thank you.
Mrs. Vine?
Sharon, I just want to thank you and Glendale Healthy Kids for starting this coalition. I think it's a great idea, and I certainly agree with you that the parents and the kids need the help, and once you help one, you help both. So
absolutely. We can all make a difference. We just have to do it.
One at a time.
We have to try. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I have another item that's not on the agenda. Will the members of the Filipino American Heritage Group please come forward? I have a proclamation, again, from the mayor. Whereas the Filipino American History Month, also known as the Filipino American Heritage Month, is celebrated in the United States during the month of October, and whereas the month is also officially recognized by the California Department of Education, and in 2006 it marked the centennial celebration of Filipino migration to the United States, and whereas the city of Glendale recognizes the increasing number of Filipinos who live and work in the city and therefore join in the celebration of Filipino American Heritage Month. And whereas the Filipino American Business Association of Glendale, together with Soroptimist International of the Verdugos, will celebrate Filipino American Heritage Month with visual arts, dance, and cultural presentations. Now, therefore, Zari Sinanyan, the mayor of Glendale, proclaims the month of October 2014 as Filipino American Heritage Month. And I'm going to give this to Mr. Weaver, who's married into your group.
And you have an exciting event coming up, right? Maybe you can talk about it.
Very exciting. Yeah, thank you.
Then they had another meeting to go to, another Filipino meeting.
She'll be there Friday.
Yeah, I found out I will be too.
You too. Thank you. Thank you, David. Honorable Mayor Pro Tem, Aaron Najarian, and members of the Glendale City Council, we are truly honored to be here today to receive the proclamation declaring Philippine History Month in the city of Glendale. I'm joined tonight by past presidents of the Filipino-American Glendale Association and together with past presidents of Seroptimus International of the Verdugos, Edith Fuentes, who is a familiar face here, and Stephanie Mines. The Filipino-American Business Association of Glendale, organized under the auspices of the Glendale Chamber of Commerce, was organized in 1991 and is the longest running Filipino Chamber of Commerce in Los Angeles County. We are proud of our accomplishments. Last year, 2 major Filipino corporations moved to the city of Glendale. Asian Journal Publications, the biggest Filipino-American publication in California, and ABS-CBN, the Filipino channel. The city of Glendale continues to attract these huge corporations because of its economic stability and the public safety experienced by companies who relocate here. It's still the safest city in the nation. We invite you to join us on Friday, October 17, starting at 6 p.m. at the Glendale Recreation Center, 201 Colorado, the corner of Louise, as we celebrate Philippine History Month with songs, dances, and a Filipiniana fashion show by renowned couturier, also located in Glendale, Lou Rason, who also joins us here today. Where is she? If you want a nice Filipina dress made or a wedding outfit, see Lou Rason. Thank you very much again.
Thank you. That concludes our presentations and appointments. Next item, please.
4, consent items, including minutes. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed.
I would like to pull C.
I'll move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, so that's items A, B, and D. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian, Mayor Pro Tem Najarian.
Yes. Will you please read C into the record?
4C, General Manager of GWP regarding quit claim the city's utility easement at 201 West Lexington Drive to Citibank N.A. C1, resolution authorizing quit claim.
So my question is, there was a project, this is that Citibank block, if I'm not mistaken, and there was, I think it came before us for design review stage 1, and in that there was a reconveyance of the alleyway. There was an alleyway. Is this duplicative of?
No. No, sir.
So what are we doing?
Mr. Najarian, this is simply an old utility easement. We don't own the property. We simply had a utility easement in this area for underground or for services that were there. They're no longer there. We've relocated them. The only thing remaining is some obsolete conduit and a hole that we will not be using. It's not currently using. We have no future plans to use it. So the easement is essentially no good to us. We don't have any use for it. So we're turning it back over to the property owner. So this is not us giving property back. We don't have ownership of the property. We're simply relinquishing the easement.
And I understand there's a new proposal for this property coming forward.
Yeah, I'd have to defer to Mr. Hagani.
Talks about it. We haven't had an application submitted yet.
Okay. That answers my questions. Are there any other questions from council? If not, will someone move for C?
For C, so moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Devine,
Yes.
Friedman.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian. Mayor Pro Tem Najarian.
Yes. Thank you. That concludes the consent calendar. Next item.
City Council and staff comments.
Do you want me to start?
Sure, if you're ready.
Okay. All right, thank you. First of all, it was quite a busy week and an exciting week for our city. So many events going on where our community got together and celebrated different occasions. The first event I recall is the International Walk to School Day, and I met at R.D. White with Chief Castro and about 40 children, and we walked them to R.D. White, and this went on all over the school district. It was absolutely fantastic. They teach them safe crossing, how to look both ways. They teach them about fitness and how healthy walking is. So it was quite the program, and I congratulate everyone that was involved in that program. I also attended the Armenian Korean Festival at Crescenta Valley High School, and if you have never been to this festival, you must go next year. It's fantastic. At the time that I was there, it was the Korean dancers and drummers and beautifully costumed food, lots of people, and what a great way for our community to bond. And finally, I attended the Homenet Men Friendship Games, had the opportunity to see our city manager play basketball. Not a pretty picture.
Lightly.
No,
Not
I'm
a
kidding.
pretty picture. Not a pretty
No,
picture.
it was a lot of fun. He did very well. But it was great, again, to see from the littlest to the oldest basketball players and ping pong players all getting together, enjoying a day of fun. Those were all really great events. On a more serious note, I'd like to alert our residents about a ballot initiative that was just recently announced a couple weeks ago. All I'm asking you to do is make sure that you look at this ballot initiative. It's Proposition P. It's going to be on the ballot on November the 4th. And as I say, they just kind of slid it on there at the last minute. It is concerning parks. And I hope that you will read the proposition, make your decision. It could mean money for Glendale and for other communities for park programs. So please be sure that's Proposition P. And also to my fellow council members, in the absence of Mayor Sinanian, I've been asked to have placed on our agenda for consideration next week the mayor's resolution recognizing and endorsing the proposal to bring a 2022 World's Fair to Los Angeles. The theme of the fair is the Connected City and will attract significant trade, tourism, and businesses to the region. And so I'd like to know if I can get a second on that request.
Sure, we'll talk about it.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to make a nomination to be voted on next week for the Commission on the Status of Women. It's Diane Lambalate, and I will read her qualifications to the public next week, but she's an attorney. I've interviewed her. She's extremely well qualified. She's done a lot of nonprofit work, and I think she'll be a great addition to the Commission. I echo all of the great events that Ms. Devine went to, how wonderful they were. I was at Glen Oaks Elementary for Walk to School Day, and there was a great comment. I overheard one of the staffers at the school, not a teacher, but someone who was working on the grounds, looked around and he said, "Why don't they do this every day?" And it's true. We all complain about traffic around the schools, and we have an obvious solution, which is to do walking school buses to help get our kids safely to school without dropping them right in front of the doors. You'll deal with the congestion and help deal with things like obesity and childhood diabetes and all the things that plague our young kids today, not to mention reducing car trips and air pollution and all of those. So I know that Walk Bike Glendale and Safe Routes to Schools has been doing a lot of work to try to help and encourage making it safer for kids to walk and bike to school, but it really begins with all of the parents making that commitment. Even if it's parking 2 blocks away and walking those 2 blocks, you help relieve so much congestion around the schools and make it safer and get your kids into the healthy habit of walking. So, and the kids had a blast. They were having so much fun walking with their friends. It was great to see. I think that the Korean Armenian Festival now is the Korean Latino Armenian Festival. They added another group, and it made it even richer and more interesting and more vibrant. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing it again next year and hopefully adding more and more ethnic groups into the mix. We certainly have a lot of diversity in Glendale, and it's great to see it celebrated. I also attended the Canines in the Park / Kiwanis Incredible Duck Splash, which is a cohabiting event. We have the Canines in the Park to raise money for our canine program, which helps so much with law enforcement in Glendale. Such a fun event. Lots of dogs there. I didn't see any cats, so they were not represented, but lots of dogs. Dogs having fun, people having fun, watching the dogs have fun. And the Kiwanis Duck Splash, raising lots of money for our charities in Glendale through the hard work of the Kiwanis and thousands of small rubber ducks who were meticulously trained and groomed and bred throughout the year for this event, and went home with a bunch of kids I know. I got one for my daughter, and she's been having a lot of fun with it. I don't remember who won, but somebody did win the $10,000 first prize, and I know that there were other prizes as well. And the biggest winner, though, was the city of Glendale, raising all this money for nonprofits and great things to happen in the community. So thank you, Kiwanis, and thank you, Police Foundation, for doing that as well. And then I'm going to let Mr. Najarian talk about the transportation conference. I attended a reception that they held, very well attended by heavyweight transportation people and political people from around the region. So I know that brought some really good notice into Glendale. And it was the first time that I've been to a reception between our historic train station and the train tracks out in the back. What a great place to have receptions. We should, is that ours or does that belong to Metro?
I believe that's ours up to the right of way.
We should start renting that out for events. It was really terrific. Everybody talked about what a great place it was to have an event. So, Mr. Najarian, if you're interested in talking about that, I
will. I'll give Councilman Weaver. Okay, he'll pass. Yes, so last week, on Thursday, the California Transportation Commission came to Glendale, and it was quite a big event for us, and it was an opportunity for us to showcase our city and some of our transportation locales. I had a chance to address the commission with the mayor in the morning at the Embassy Suites, and the CTC discusses transportation projects of statewide importance and that are funded from the state legislature and the state budget. In the evening, we did have that great reception that Ms. Friedman referred to. It was right at the Larry Zarian Transportation Center, and I could tell and I could hear from each of the speakers from the commission how impressed they were with Glendale, with the I guess the quality of our train station as to the architecture and the location and the ease in which you could take a beeline bus from the Embassy Suites down to the train station and jump on the train. And we had trains going back and forth. It was a wonderful evening. Kudos to Dan Bell. Dan, I got you, buddy. Good job organizing. And I think everyone left that event with really a great feeling about Glendale. At least they said so. So that was a great opportunity for us. Also, I've just returned from the American Public Transportation Association annual meeting in Houston. It was a chance for transportation professionals throughout the country to meet and to exchange ideas and to look at different products and techniques and technologies to make transportation much better for everyone. And I am happy to say that I had a chance to sit down with the electric bus manufacturer BYD, who has started manufacturing electric buses in the Palmdale area, actually in the Lancaster area, and they're providing buses to Metro on a trial basis. I haven't sealed the deal, but I'm hoping to get a free a loaner, if you will, a loaner bus, so we can put it on our system for a couple days, see how it works, see how the residents like it, and see if they can tell the difference between one and the other. These buses, according to their cost breakdown, will save money over 5 years' time. And do we have a video? No, we don't have the video yet. Over 5 years' time, because there's no maintenance for engines, there's no maintenance for transmissions. The batteries can be leased and therefore guaranteed a certain lifespan, and they have a great range, up to 200 miles, which is more than enough for one bus trip per day. And I know we fill up our CNG buses at least once a day. In the evening, we fill it up. So I'm going to eventually turn over the nuts and bolts of that to our city manager and Mr. Galanyan to get one of those BYD 30-foot buses to put on a trial run. And if so, then we can talk about what sort of technology in buses that we want to get into in the near future. And as I said, I came all the way back from Houston just to make this meeting. And it was an important meeting, and I could have stayed another night, 2 nights in Houston, but my heart is with Glendale. Well, let's move on then, if there are no other any comments from staff?
May we make one quick update on a couple of key infrastructure projects? If I could bring up our Public Works Director, Mr. Galanian, talk about the next phase of the Kenyatta Boulevard project and the Glendale Avenue project. Rubik?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Najarian, members of the City Council. Thank you, Scott. As Scott mentioned, as you know, the last few months we've been involved in improving and upgrading our critical infrastructure on Kenyatta Boulevard as well as Glendale Avenue. And both of these projects are nearing the completion of the paving operation, and wanted to provide a heads up to the public. We will also use several outreach platforms. All these notifications will be on our Facebook page. We will tweet the updates. It will be on city's website, as well as changeable message signs that are in place. They will broadcast the data and the restrictions. I will send a letter out tomorrow to the residents. The contractors will hand out 3-day door hanger notifications on Friday for the Kenyatta paving operation, and the following Friday for the Glendale Avenue paving operation. Just a quick rundown, starting next Monday, October 20th, we'll start the grinding on Kenyatta Boulevard. It will be a 4 to 5 day process, and it will require lane reductions with minor delays to access cross traffic. On October 27th, the following Monday, we'll start the base paving with the cold-in-place recycling pavement rehabilitation that I have previously noted. Just quickly, this is an environmental friendly process that's done with a train of almost 120 feet long equipment that grinds the existing pavement, breaks it down into appropriate sizes, adds oil to it, and immediately puts it back onto the roadway as base for the new pavement. We chose this rehabilitation process primarily because of the reduced impact to the neighborhood traffic and the environment, not to mention cost savings, because essentially we will not be using hundreds of trucks to offload the existing pavement and then import new pavement as base for the street. And finally, on November 11th, we'll surface pave Kenyatta Boulevard. This will be another 4 to 5 day process, and this will require reductions with significant delays of up to an hour for traveling public. On November 5th and 10th, we'll slurry seed the side streets, not grinding and paving, only slurry sealing, and these streets will be closed for 1 full day to help cure the slurry seal in place. On Glendale Avenue, the same process starts only a week later, the following Monday on October 27th. And we're asking the public to use alternate streets when possible. leave early, make arrangements to leave early before 7 a.m. That's when the construction operation starts, specifically between October 27th and October 31st. We'll allow additional travel time for delays, and we'll direct traffic as much as we can onto our alternate routes. With that, I will entertain any questions you may have.
I have a question. Are you going to have signage that people can see and take alternate routes before they actually get to the traffic jam?
Yes, Ms. Friedman,
They don't get
absolutely.
in it and then see the signs?
Yes, we have some very robust traffic control plan in place that includes advanced notification and signs before they get to the project site.
Mr. Galanyan, I know there's some work being done on the water system beneath the roadway surface, some valve replacement and main line replacement. Is that almost completed?
Mayor Pro Tem, yes, the water installation and lining has been 99% complete. So by Monday, everything on Kenyatta Boulevard, including the valves and the adjustments of it, will be completed. However, during the months of November and December, we'll have some underground storm drain work and sewer work that to be done on Glorietta and Ramona. And the reason we're doing the paving before that operation is because we want to take advantage of the warm weather while we can.
And I'd just like to add, it's just a shame that our resident critic, Herbert Milano, is no longer a resident, because he judged the competency of not just the Public Works Department, but the City Council on the condition of Kenyatta Boulevard. And I know that this process has been several years in the making, and despite all our assurances to him that we were on our way to replace the pavement, he continued to criticize and ridicule and level unfounded criticism against you, your predecessor, Mr. Zern, and all of us on the council. So there you go, Herbert. We got new pavement. Get out of town.
So, Mr. Galani, can I ask you then, what is the final date of completion with that? Is that around November the 13th or?
Councilmember Devine, the absolute last day of contract work is January 5th for Kenyatta Boulevard. But as I indicated, the majority of the work on Kenyatta Boulevard will be completed by November 15th or so. There'll be some incidental work left on the side streets, minor work, and cleanup. On Glendale Avenue project, the last day of the contract was December 24th.
Thank you.
But the major work on both streets will be done before Thanksgiving.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Happy holidays.
Will there be any special striping features on those streets, crosswalks or bike sharrows or narrows, bump outs, anything else that we've talked about for the past few months?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, very good point. As part of the Kenyatta Boulevard project, we will install sharrow markings for bicyclists. On Glendale Avenue, we plan on striping 7 intersections with zebra crossing, the Continental Crossing, as well as the controlled intersection of Los Feliz and Glendale Avenue with zebra crossing, and combination of dedicated bike lanes and sharrows on Glendale Avenue.
That's good. Good to hear. Any other comments on the presentation?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to ask, on that long expanse on Glendale Avenue between, I guess it's Mountain and, where we had an accident already, is there any plan of putting a crosswalk or something, markings of any kind in the middle of that huge expanse?
Councilmember Devine, we are studying that location to see what would be feasible to install there.
Great, thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Glendale Avenue the heaviest trafficked street in Glendale?
Mr. Weaver, I believe that's the case, yes.
So, bicyclists, you're going to be on the heaviest traveled street in Glendale. That's going to be a rough one. Beware.
Don't forget the 3-foot rule.
Yeah.
And the 3-foot rule, and any bicyclist on there is going to be at least 2 feet away from parked cars. So that's another 5 feet out before you can have a lane. So you're going to be moving into the lane to the left to go up it.
Well, let's just all of us watch out for cyclists and pedestrians, and it's it's a caution that we can't overstate.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Galania.
Thank you
for your report. Okay, are there any other comments by staff?
No, sir.
Okay, let's move on to the next item.
Under community event announcements, 3 minutes long.
Thank you. I have several cards. The first one is from Sam Janawi. I pronounced that correctly.
Genoway. Good evening, members of the council, city staff, and the good people of Glendale. I'm here to talk about the Glendale Riverwalk project, a quick update from our meeting on September 11th, and to invite all of you to come to our next workshop, which is on October the 29th. On September 11th, a large crowd of the community came out to talk about the Glendale Riverwalk project. For those not familiar, the Riverwalk project is a unique community amenity. It will increase access to the LA River in Griffith Park. It will improve connectivity and safety of the bicycle, pedestrian, and even possibly equestrian paths. It'll also provide a gateway to the Grand Central Creative Campus, River Glen Opportunity Area, and the San Fernando Creative Corridor. The community came out and brought wonderful ideas and a very positive attitude towards the project and really helped to inform our team. Because of their good work on the meeting on September 11th, on October the 29th, we're going to show some of the results of that. We're going to look at the results of the meeting, look at different bridge designs, and talk a bit more specifically about the location of that potential pedestrian bridge. The meeting will be split up into 2 portions. The first portion from 4 to 5:30 is going to be a tour, a walking tour, and we like to encourage people to come out and actually experience Riverwalk. You'll be meeting at the entry park located at the intersection of Paula Street and Garden Avenue. Please wear walking shoes. And then later that evening from 6:30 to 8 p.m. we'll be having an interactive workshop at the Pacific Community Center Gymnasium at 501 South Pacific Avenue. And we'll have refreshments and we'll continue our discussion. It was a great first meeting, a real positive step. We're looking forward to seeing the community's reaction from what we've heard from them. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to entertain them. Otherwise, we hope to see some of you there. Thank you.
Next speaker is Michelle Roberts.
Good evening, council members, staff. I'm the executive director of the YWCA of Glendale, and I'm here tonight to take this opportunity to again highlight the candlelight vigil that's held each October in Glendale at the YWCA in collaboration with the Commission on the Status of Women. As you've already proclaimed, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It has been celebrated, if that's the word, nationally since 1987. We just wanted to highlight the fact that there are many community partners and organizations that are working to address the issue of domestic violence in our community. And this year at our vigil, we will take the opportunity to provide special recognition to the Glendale Police Department for their work in addressing the problem of domestic violence in our community. We've worked very diligently the last few years with the Glendale Police Department to improve response to families experiencing domestic violence, and we've seen a great improvement in that area. So we encourage the council members to attend, city staff to attend. We actually are having our event at 5 p.m. this year because there's another event at 6 p.m., the Glendale Youth Alliance event, that we know many city staff and community members will be attending. So we do hope that people will at least take the opportunity to stop by. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last speaker is Vahe Perumian.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Najarian and members of the City Council. The hat I'm wearing tonight is the Board President of the Glendale Youth Alliance, or GYA. I have with me members of the board and staff of GYA. GYA's mission is to provide, coordinate, and support youth employment activities, efforts, and programs that have a positive impact on Glendale area youth. To date, GYA has provided jobs and training to over 7,500 of Glendale's low-income youth between the ages of 14 and 21. I'm here tonight to invite you and the public to the roast fundraiser of our very own city manager, Scott Ochoa. which will be held on October 23rd at 6 p.m. at the Vertigo event venue on Glen Oaks. Tickets for the event are $100 each and include a silent auction, dinner, and of course, entertainment. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event and one that will be remembered for years to come, I guarantee you. For tickets, please call Tina Osborne at 818-548-2714. That's 818-548-2714. Or you can go to itsmyseat.com and search by date, October 23rd, or by GYA. You can also visit our Facebook page. We do have a deadline for ordering your seats, which is this Friday, October 17th, so make sure you get in your reservations by then. Thank you very much, and I hope to see every one of you there. Thanks a lot.
I think you probably will.
Do you need any material on this roast? Or?
Well, I can tell you that the list of roasters is the closest held secret in Glendale right now.
No.
But we're sure to entertain.
I met Mr. Ochoa's brother a couple of weeks ago, and he said Scott was so boring as a young boy that his parents had to tie a bone around his neck just to get the dog to play with him. So I'm sure there'll be more of that coming at the roast.
Much more of that, yes. Well, we hope to see all of you there, and thanks a lot for your time. Thank you.
As long as you don't let Mr. Najarian tell the jokes.
Was that a preview?
I'm not speaking. I was left off the list. I wonder why. That's why. Okay. Thank you. Are there any more speakers for community event announcements? I don't believe so. So let's move on to the next item, please.
Action items. Director of Human Resources regarding Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, between the City and Glendale City Employees Association, GCA, MOU between the City and Glendale Management Association, GMA, and resolutions addressing the compensation and benefits of executive-level employees. 8A1, resolution approving and adopting the MOU for GCA commencing July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2017. 8A2, resolution approving and adopting the MOU for GMA commencing July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2017. 8A3, resolution providing for the establishment of classification titles and compensation of executive-level employees. 8A4, resolution providing for supplementary benefits and compensation of certain officers and employees to supplement the classification and compensation resolution and including additional vacation leave for the city manager and city attorney.
Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. Previously, you had considered and ultimately approved a multi-year agreement with the Glendale Police Officers Association that mirrored the existing agreement with Glendale Firefighters Association. These four actions, specifically Resolutions 1 and 2, are with the Glendale City Employees Association and then, respectively, the Glendale Management Association, all of our mid-managers. The third resolution pertains to our executive group. They generally follow the terms that are negotiated for the GMA group. And then the fourth resolution concerns the two employees that fall into none of those categories, Mr. Garcia and myself as your city attorney and your city manager. I certainly will turn this over to Mr. Doyle to talk about the terms of these agreements, or these MOUs, but I do want to point out that this is the first time since before the Great Recession that we've been able to put together a multi-year agreement. Now, although multi-year agreements are things that we used to see in the past, I can tell you that the terms that Mr. Doyle will outline for you are not like anything that you had seen in the years before the Great Recession. I am very pleased and proud of our employees and the reasonableness that they have demonstrated at the negotiating table as we made our way through the recession, up to and including the ongoing streamlining of our organization, whereby we are continuing to find ways to refine our business activities and our processes so that we can save money and do the same work or better for less money, that then allows us the capacity to reinvest in the organization. We are indeed working much more efficiently. So with that as a preamble, let me turn this over to Mr. Doyle. He will walk you through the terms of these respective MOUs. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa. Members of Council, I'm very pleased to bring forth resolutions adopting memoranda of understanding between the City and the Glendale City Employees Association, the City and the Glendale Management Association. Additionally, resolutions are being put forth relating to the compensation and benefits of our executive group. These agreements will be for the duration of 3 years from July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2017. Again, as Mr. Ochoa said, this is the first multi-year agreements entered into by these two associations since 2005. 2005, we had a 4-year MOU, which concluded in 2009, and then every MOU adopted since then have been for 1-year increments. These agreements contain what I would call very modest salary adjustments for the groups affected in the second and third years of these MOUs. There will be nothing, no type of adjustment in the first year. The second year, July 1st, 2015, we will have a 1-year salary adjustment. I'm sorry, a 1% salary adjustment. In the third year of the agreement, July 1st of 2016, we have a 3% salary adjustment offset by an increased PERS contribution of 1% for both GCA, GMA, as well as the executives. So it's essentially a net increase of 2% in that second year. Again, these are the first across-the-board salary adjustments for either of these two groups since 2008. Additionally, other terms of this MOU involve changes to benefit items and other extra pay items. One significant element of each of these is a increased contribution toward employee retiree health savings accounts. There's modification to the health maintenance and professional development policies for both GCA and GMA. With GCA, there are 2 additional certification pays that will take into effect. One recognizing our non-sworn employees and our police who work in the state-of-the-art DNA lab. The other is employees of our Public Works and Fire Department Environmental Group, certification for inspecting underground storage tanks. The city did get some key concessions in this MOU, the biggest being the ability to move our payday back by 6 days, and ultimately we hope to have a payday that's offered on a biweekly basis as opposed to a semi-monthly basis. And this is something that would assist us in better complying with wage and hour laws and our Fair Labor Standards Act. Both of these MOUs relative to GCA and GMA were adopted, and I will say, by overwhelming majorities with both groups, and we're very happy to see that. As far as the executive compensation and benefits, as Mr. Ochoa said, the executives' agreement would mostly mirror what was adopted with the GMA. I will, at this point, need to make one correction to the executive compensation resolution, and that's Resolution 8A3 on page 4, item A. It indicates that the 1% adjustment would be effective July 1st, 2014. That should say July 1st, 2015, and that's again consistent with what GCA and GMA is getting. Staff is recommending council approval of all of these resolutions, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions.
If I could just punctuate one final item there, and then certainly turn it over to the council, as just to underscore what Matt had indicated. The 1% in the, not in the current fiscal year, but in the coming fiscal year, would be the first across-the-board increase for our employees in these bargaining groups since before the recession. That is something that, one, is very well deserved. If you look at our deliverables, certainly I don't think that we've missed much of a beat at all in terms of the downsizing of this organization from a max of almost 2,000 full-time employees to currently less than 1,500 just under 1,500 full-time employees. When you look at those key performance indicators, the goal attainment that we present to the council semi-annually and certainly as part of the budget process, I think you can say you're getting great value for the money that you are paying. And even when you look into the third year where there is a 2%, a net 2% increase, the reason why that's net is because Glendale continues to lead the state, not just the region, in the pension cost sharing that offsets the cost that is choking so many of our communities in this state. This is something that the council has been a part of, that has demanded and dictated for the last several years, and something that ultimately was recognized and appreciated by the bargaining groups and reached in good faith. So it's something that I think sets a profile that is really consistent with what the council has adopted as part of your budgets over the last 3 years as a compensation strategy and as a principle of compensation management, such that we would pay average salaries and expect above average effort. These agreements certainly are in line with that philosophy, and I certainly do not wish to indicate that the the associations have not bargained for the absolute best that their employees could get. But again, they recognize that although we've made it through the recession, although we are still very strong, that there is an obligation to make sure that we are able to stay viable for the long term as we look towards the future. So with that, certainly we would be happy to answer any questions from the council.
Are there any questions? Ms. Devine.
I have a question. You list the fiscal impact of all of the MOUs, except that you don't have number 4, the impact for the compensation, the supplementary benefits, and I wondered if you could share those.
Certainly. I think we've costed that out as part of, you're referring to Mr. Garcia and myself.
Correct.
As part of our contracts, respectively, the council does an annual evaluation of Mr. Garcia's performance, my performance. I'm very pleased, very thankful for the positive reviews granted by the council. What we have put forward here hopefully is a reflection of what council believes is appropriate reward for the job done by way of a additional time accrued for vacation. That, I believe, on the gross, if it is paid out, and it isn't necessarily paid out, I believe in my cases, do we have that? Is it 4,500? I believe it is.
In members of council, Mr. Ochoa, we have a rough cost of that item for on behalf of both the city attorney and city manager, approximately $12,000 per year. That's what we would call a soft cost. It's not something that it's going to be paid out necessarily, but when it's done in the form of vacation, it's leave time, and it's non-productive time that they're not here, essentially. So it's approximately $6,000 per employee per year, and we got that figure just simply by looking at the hourly wage and multiplying that by 56 hours that were added.
Okay. Thank you.
Any cards?
I do have one card. Mike Mohill, 3 minutes.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pro Tem Najarian. My name is Mike Mohill. Tonight, council will be asked to approve 3-year contract for general employee and manager unions, a 1% increase the second year, and 3% increase in the third year. Why are we giving pay raises and a 3-year contract and a continued bad economy? Not mentioned in these contracts is the effect the salary increases will have on the pension these employees will receive when they reach the age of 50 or 55 and have 30 years of service. Glendale employees will be receiving about 60% of their last year's salary as their annual lifetime pension. Manager will receive about 75% of their last year's salary as their lifetime pension. About 30% of our union workforce have salaries between $100,000 to $200,000 plus annually. It is argued that if we do not pay our city employees well, they will leave and go someplace else to work. There are thousands of struggling families who would love to work for the city of Glendale. Recently, when Glendale Fire Department was hiring 15 new recruits, the city received over 3,000 applications. Glendale employees are earning significantly more money from a comparable job than in the private industry. They also earn between $1,000 and $2,000 per month more than a comparable job with the County of Los Angeles. The number one cost to the city is the salaries and the pension obligation, which this council and previous council have burdened the Glendale taxpayers. To pay for these unfunded and unsustainable obligations, our city council has approved electric rate and water rate increases, fees and new fee increases, and the building of mega apartment complexes to generate more property tax revenue. Last year, about $20 million was illegally transferred from Glendale Water and Power into the pockets of our CalPERS union workforce. Recently, about 25% of our union workforce have been laid off before the age of 50 or 55 with a golden parachute in order to balance the budget. These good employees would not have been laid off if, from the beginning, they were on Social Security and a 401k plan, just like 90% of the American workforce. Furthermore, the taxpayers would not be on the hook for this pension crisis. Council members, please do the right thing and vote against these pay raises and form a blue ribbon panel for true pension reform. Thank you.
I have no other cards on this item.
Would you like a motion?
If there's no other discussion?
Well, let me just make a comment. One thing that Mr. Mohill said was that the staff report didn't address the pension issue. And actually, one of the things that we're getting in exchange, I would say, for that 3% in the third year is a higher contribution from the employees towards their pensions, which benefits the city. What do our employees pay percentage-wise, just so the public is clear, out of their paycheck every month towards their pensions?
Members of the council, Councilwoman Friedman, they pay the full employee share, which for our miscellaneous employees, that would be covered by this. It's 8% of the salary, and on top of that, it's an additional 3% of the employer share. So it's a total right now of 11%. After the third year of this contract, it would be 12%, and that's higher than really any other agency that I'm aware of, and certainly all of our surrounding cities do not make that type of contribution by their employees.
So I don't want to imply that there's no challenges when it comes to cities and our city having to pay pensions, particularly with employees that already retired under a more lucrative pension system. But right now, our employees will be paying 13% on average of their paycheck every month towards their pensions. So you can't really leave that out of the equation. When you talk about them leaving with a handsome pension, which they do, they'll also have paid into that, getting that pension. So they're paying that, not the taxpayers. And there are a lot of agencies that don't pay anything, where the employees don't pay anything towards their pensions. And the fact that our employees pay part of the employer's share, the part that we're supposed to pay, is very unusual. And I've talked to council members and representatives from many, many different agencies in many cities. And they're kind of shocked that we've been able to negotiate that with our employees, because most of them are just starting out on trying to go in that direction. And how many years has it been since we've given a raise or a COLA to our employee groups?
Councilwoman Freeman, for the GCA and GMA, the last across-the-board cost of living increase for those two groups was July of 2008.
To 2008 to now,
executives, it would have been July of 2007.
So between 6 and 7 years, they've not gotten any cost of living increase. And meanwhile, there has been a cost of living increase just in terms of inflation, housing prices going up, rental prices going up, all of that. So I certainly don't think it's extreme to give a 1% and then a 3% increase, which is offset by 2% being given back towards the pensions over 6 and 7 years, which is really how you have to look at it. I mean, I think to say a 1% increase over 7 years, many people, even in the private sector, have gotten more than that. And we are asking our employees to do a lot more because we have less employees than we did in the past. So it's definitely the case that we're taking our pension obligations seriously. We understand the challenges that it presents. I think we are treating our employees fairly, and not just that, I think that they've really been making a lot of sacrifices and not taking a COLA, not taking any cost of living increase over the years, and paying more and more towards their pensions and towards their own health care, which they do. So I want the public to understand that. Thank you.
Mr. Weaver?
Just comment before I move the items. Same thing. The employees have really hung in there in these times. It hasn't been easy for them, trying to understand why we can't give the pay raises. We understand it up here. Very proud of all the associations for what they have sacrificed for the city and doing more with 500 less workers. And for me, I'm not getting any complaints from residents that we're shirking our responsibilities in serving them. And just thinking the one thing that is kind of comical, I've sat here 18 years. My salary has not increased $1. In fact, it's been cut in half. Redevelopment went away. We lost all that money. So we're the only ones that have not had a pay raise in my 18 years and probably many more years before that. And with that, I'd like to move 8A 1, 2, 4, and 3 as revised.
And I'll second it. And since I didn't say it before, I do want to thank all of our collective bargaining groups for being our partners in this round of negotiations and over the past several years. They've been, if I'm speaking to you directly, or they have been really great to work with. They've tried to do their best for their members, but they've also been very mindful of the financial situation, and they've, I think, taken a lot of hits and gone beyond. So thank you to all of our groups. And that was my second.
And before we do roll, I just have one comment. The complaint is that there's a 1 or 2% increase that we're giving to our employees. But let's do some simple math. We used to have 2,000 employees. We're now down to about 1,500 employees. Those 1,500 employees are essentially doing the same work that 2,000 used to do. So that, by my calculations, is a 33% increase in productivity by our workforce. Is that math correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And in exchange, we're giving them a 1% increase.
Next year.
Next year.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, I think Mr. Mulhill has left the council chambers. Didn't hear that. Oh, well.
When we start to speak the truth, he doesn't want to hear it. He's got to run out the room. So let's take roll call, please.
Councilmember Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian? Mayor Pro Tem Najarian?
Yes. The items pass. Thank you. Next item, please.
9 hearings. 9A, Director of Community Development regarding appeal of Historic Preservation Commission, denial of design review case number PDR 1329306, located at 1555 Valley View Road. 9A1, motion to overturn the Commission's decision and approve the application with conditions. 9A2, motion directing staff to prepare findings to sustain the Commission's decision to deny the application.
Ms. Friedman.
Thank you. I am going to recuse myself on this project. I live around the corner, actually only 4 houses away from the project, so I am conflicted out by California law. In addition, because I knew that we would be conflicted out, my husband did accept a job doing some work on this project for the homeowner, so I'm doubly conflicted out. And I will ask permission of the Mayor Pro Tem for me to leave for the evening, since this is our last item besides oral communications, with my promise of watching oral communications at home so that I'll hear anything that's communicated to the council.
With those conditions, you are excused.
Thank you.
Go see your baby.
Have a good night, everybody.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like, if I may.
Ms. Devine?
Yeah, I'd like to, in the absence of Mr. Sinanian, ask for a continuance on this item, if there's any agreement to that.
No agreement here. This is very unusual. Twice in the last 2 months, We postpone because a council member is missing. If they're here and they're on travel, that's their problem. In 18 years, I've seldom ever seen this motion happen. There's 3 of us here. We can conduct a council meeting legally, and I will not postpone.
Not hearing a second, the motion fails. I do, however, before we do an official roll, want to give an opportunity to anyone from the audience in attendance to address only the issue of the motion to continue. Mr. Garcia, is that appropriate at this time?
Well, if it doesn't have the second, I'm not sure the necessities to.
But that would be improper. We need
Correct.
a second first.
Yeah, that's my opinion. Just because.
Okay, then I will strike those previous remarks, and we will move into the item. Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, we'll bring up the case planner, Rather Duong, to begin the staff presentation. Effectively, this is a property that was considered previously. It's being appealed, of course, here to you as a de novo hearing. We should open up the public hearing, take the staff report, and then receive the testimony and be able to move forward from there, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Duong.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Najarian and council members.
I'm sorry, I will open the public hearing.
So I'll start over.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Najarian and council members. This item before you tonight is an appeal of the Historic Preservation Commission denial of case number PDR 132-9306, located at 1555 Valley View Road. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 2-story house that is 4,530 square feet with a detached 3-car garage, and also to demolish the existing 1-story house and detached 2-car garage. The subject site is located in the R1R floor area ratio District 2 Historic District Overlay Zone. The lot is 15,370 square feet. It is irregularly shaped and has 2 frontages, one along Valley View and one along Arbor Drive. This is a map showing the Brockman Park Historic District, bounded in black. The subject site is outlined in red. Within this district, there are 59 homes. 52 homes are contributors, while 7 homes are non-contributors. This accounts for 88% of the homes that are considered contributors. There are 2 architectural styles that are prevalent within this district, which are ranch and Spanish colonial revival. Basically, there are 13 ranch homes and 20 Spanish colonial revival homes. The other homes that make up the districts reflect some type of period revival buildings. Homes were built between the 1920s and mid-1950s, which is also the period of significance for this district. Here's an aerial photograph showing the Brockman Park Historic District outlined in yellow, and the subject property is also highlighted. In this photo, you can clearly see some of the features of the property, including the house, the detached 2-car garage, and the tennis court. Here's another close-up view of the subject property and its surrounding the surrounding buildings. And the next 2 slides will show photos of the existing properties, its features, as well as the conditions. This is, again, a ranch-style house built in 1954. Here are photos from different vantage points, including the story poles, which is required for 2-story buildings, as well as the tennis court. Here you'll see 2 site plans, one for the existing site configuration and one representing the new project. Under the existing site condition, you'll see a rectilinear building footprint fronting Valley View Road, a detached 2-car garage, mid-lot between the tennis court and the house. And as you can see, the tennis court also consumes a good portion of the lot. Under the proposed site plan, you have an irregularly shaped building footprint, also fronting Valley View Road, and a new detached three-car garage fronting Arbor Drive, and will also be accessed from the same street. A pool will be located between the two buildings. The next couple of slides which show the elevation of the proposed building. This is a Spanish colonial revival residence, 2-story in volume. As you can see in these drawings, there are some character-defining features that will be incorporated into the project, such as the parabolic fixed living room windows, arches, barrel-shaped tile roof, recessed windows that will be either casement, hung, or awnings, and as well as an arch carport. So there are a number of balconies on the second floor. As you can see, the top photo is the front elevation facing Valley View, and the bottom photo is the rear elevation showing the sweeping staircase that will front Arbor Drive. These are the two side elevations, and these are elevations of the detached garage fronting Arbor Drive. And this is a slide showing the materials that will be used. These materials are high qualities and are consistent with the chosen style. So also the project is exempt under categorical exemption class 3. Ms. Yvette Nukian will further discuss in detail about the CEQA interpretation for this project. So in filing the appeal, the appellant raised a number of points. And the first item is that the Design Review Board abused its discretion by failing to review the project. The second point raised was that the HPC, Historic Preservation Commission, acted arbitrarily in denying the project without any basis under CEQA. The third item is that the demolition would not be detrimental to the historic district because it does not represent the best example of a ranch-style home. The fourth point was that the application was deemed complete prior to the establishment of a historic district, and the property was not properly included within the district. And the last item is that the Historic Preservation Commission had conflict of interest in deciding on the project due to the membership in the Glendale Historical Society. The responses to these items have been included in the staff report to the City Council. So essentially, Council is asked to balance the existing structure's contribution to the district versus the merit of the replacement project. This is essentially covered under the Glendale Municipal Code, Chapter 30.25.060. So these considerations include whether the historic or architectural significance of the structure, the importance of the structure to the historic district, whether or not this is the last remaining example of the ranch-style home, and can the structure be saved from deterioration? And the fifth item is the merit of the replacement project. And finally, can the project be incorporated into the replacement project? So there are two alternatives before Council today. Council may sustain the Historic Preservation's decision in denying the proposed demolition, or Council may reverse the Historic Preservation Commission's decision and approve the new construction with design changes as recommended in the conditions of approval. And there were 16 conditions. And that concludes my presentations. If you have any questions, I am available. Otherwise, I will turn this to Ms. Nukian for some detailed explanation on CEQA requirement.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council, City Manager, and staff. My name is Yvette Nuki, and I'm an Assistant City Attorney with the City Attorney's Office. I'm going to make a really brief presentation regarding CEQA and the analysis that we, as you as the City Council, has to do in this case. First, very briefly, CEQA is a statute that endeavors to require local agencies to assess environmental impacts of certain projects and disclose those impacts prior to approving a project. It is first and foremost a disclosure document. It does not automatically mean that an environmental impact report is prepared in every case. Some projects are exempt, other projects have what's called a mitigated negative declaration. You are all very familiar with this process, but I just wanted to remind you and for the benefit of the public. So my point here is simply that CEQA is much more complicated than simply saying this project has impacts, therefore we need to do an EIR. In the case before you today, staff has gone through all of the steps that CEQA outlines and requires and has determined this project does qualify for a Class 3 exemption, which simply means that it is a single-family home, and it is being demoed and replaced by another single-family home. Most single-family homes qualify for this exemption, and staff believes this one does as well. The only reason that this has some analysis attached to it is because there has been a question raised as to whether this is a historic resource, both individually and because it has been determined to be a contributor to a historic district. The question also becomes, so there's two questions: is this individually by itself a historic resource? And number two, because it's a contributor to the Brockmont Park Historic District, would its demolition materially alter the Brockmont Park Historic District such that the district would no longer qualify as a historic resource? And this is because any time there is a substantial adverse change in the significance of a historic resource, either the house as the resource or the district, CEQA says this means there's a significant effect on the environment. So substantial adverse change, of course, demolition qualifies as a substantial adverse change. So really, again, the question comes back to, is this a historic resource individually, and will it materially impact the Brockmont Park Historic District through the demolition? I want to raise some points. First of all contributors, not all contributors, pardon me, are automatically historic resources. You have to do an analysis to determine if that contributor rises to the level of individual historic merit such that it is individually a historic resource. And there are a few different ways it could qualify. If it's listed by the state, it's on the California Register, if it's on the Glendale Register, if we have recognized it in an ordinance or in some other legislative proclamation as a historic resource. There is a third prong. You do have the discretion to say, even though it's not on the register, the local register, the California Register, you could still find that it's a historic resource. However, it has to be based on substantial evidence. It cannot just be something you want to conclude with no evidence in the record. There has to be some expert testimony, something upon which you are basing your decision that this house is an individual historic resource by itself. Finally, there were some points raised by a letter that was submitted by the Glendale Historical Society, and we just want to cover a few of the points they made. The Glendale Historical Society claims that, and I have to clarify, the letter was written on behalf of the Glendale Historical Society by the law firm of Chatton Brown and Karstens. The Glendale Historical Society and that letter says contributors to historic districts must be considered historic resources. Staff with the City Attorney's Office, we disagree with that. A property must be listed on the local register or otherwise locally recognized to be considered a presumptive historic resource. There is another way. It could qualify as a presumptive historic resource if it meets certain requirements, if it's been identified in a survey that meets certain requirements, but staff does not believe that the survey done in this case, a reconnaissance level survey, which simply analyzed, does this have high integrity and is this house within the period of significance? We do not believe that this survey qualifies. The second contention that Glendale Historical Society made is that somehow under Glendale Municipal Code 30.25.060, which Mr. Duong referenced, which requires review and consideration under the California Environmental Quality Act, somehow means that we have to do some expanded environmental review. That's simply not true. We've done a great deal of environmental review. CEQA does not, like I said in the beginning of my presentation, we don't necessarily need to do an EIR for every single project. Some projects are exempt. We've done the CEQA review in this case. The letter also claims that the local survey designation for the Brockmont Park Historic District requires this house to be considered a historic resource because it's determined to be eligible for the local register and has a 5 status code. The only time a structure is a mandatory historic resource is when it has been formally listed in or determined to be eligible for listing in the California Register of Historical Resources, and this property does not qualify. These are all statutory provisions that we've read at the City Attorney's Office. We put a great deal of thought into this. And in conclusion, you have a difficult decision before you, but the decision is one that you will have to determine, is this an individual resource? Will the demolition materially alter this historic district? Your decision has to be based on substantial evidence. And in addition to the CEQA review, you also have to do the review required under 30.25.060, the design review standards. Of course, you can, as any design review board, as you're sitting here today as a design review board, you can approve the project with the conditions, impose your own conditions, or deny it, or ask the applicant to return with a redesign. And with that, I will end my presentation and take any questions.
Was this information in our staff report, or are you just bringing this before us now?
The information was, I believe, in the record in the HPC staff report.
Okay.
Yes.
I have that. Okay, thank you.
I also want to briefly mention that I did pass out 2 additional items that we would like to, for your consideration. One is, it was an attachment to the staff report that accompanied the Historic Preservation Commission's decision, and it was a motion with findings to deny the demolition, and it was inadvertently omitted from tonight's packet. So that was distributed along with a letter that we received today. The City Attorney's Office, Ms. Van Meiden of our office, received it today. It's a letter from a law firm that's representing the appellant, and we just received it prior to this meeting, a couple hours before. And it's also available in the back for the public. If they want a copy, they can grab one back there.
And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, let me clarify that letter from Mr. Graham's office. Actually, it's a modification to their appeal letter that's already part of the packet. They made some changes to some aspects of the citation to legal authorities, but we're providing the updated letter to you as part of the record and per Mr. Graham's request.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, are the homeowners here present? Okay. Do you have someone that you've elected to speak on your behalf? And who is that person? Mr. Oliveras. And Mr. Graham. How much time do you need to present your appeal?
I think 3 to 5 minutes.
Are you asking as a team?
I'm asking it. Well, I'm going to accumulate the time there. Would 10 minutes suit both speakers?
Yes.
Is that okay with Mr. Graham as well?
I believe so.
Okay. And then with regard to the other side, although there isn't a clear other side, let's call it the Historic Preservation Society. Is there another representative from your side that has that would like to speak? Okay, how much time would you like? Well, aside from the individuals, I'm talking about a
leader.
But this is
I'm the attorney for the
okay.
Society. 5 minutes.
Okay.
And I'd like 3 minutes.
Well, everyone who wishes to speak is entitled to. I'm just, carving out time, a little extra time for the representatives of each side. So we'll start with Mr. Oliveris and Mr. Graham for 10 minutes. Then we'll go to, is that Ms. Mintier? For 5 minutes. And then I'll take the cards as they are in order for 3 minutes each. Then I'll probably give a little time to the appellant at the end. Maybe I'll give you another 3 minutes, Mr. Oliveris, at the very end to recap. So 10 minutes for them, and then 5, and that's 3 minutes each.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Najarian and council members and staff. I'd like to touch on the timeline because I don't feel that it was adequately addressed tonight. When my clients, the Yepeses, began this process, they actually began this process back in July 6 of 2011 with a different architect. I came on board about a year ago, September 10th or so, with the intent of finishing their dream house and proceeded to work with staff in terms of designing a house that would meet the design guidelines. We all knew at the time that there was a historic movement on the neighborhood, so we were all aware of that, as were they of our plans to build a new home. We proceeded with staff to design a project and meet all of the timelines necessary for a DRB submittal. We submitted a set of plans to the city that eventually was accepted as deemed complete. We paid for a DRB application. That was always the goal. On the day of the DRB application, which happened to be the day before the district actually went into effect, and this is what the reference to the letter from legal counsel today refers to, is that if you count the days after the council vote on the historic district designation, the DRB meeting that we were scheduled for was actually the day before. When that was pulled from the calendar, I believe on the advice of legal counsel within the city, that immediately put the brakes on our presentation and the ability to present the project to DRB. So we never really had the chance to get a vested right or get some kind of approval on the project because out of our control, it was pulled from the agenda. So that's basically the timeline. I believe that we met all of the zoning ordinances, the time frames that were required to go in front of DRB. So that's my reference to the timeline. I think that your staff will agree with me, and that's what I'm going to say about the timeline. I gave everybody an updated timeline that I presented this morning with just a minor change in regards to when the neighborhood became in effect. In regards to the staff report comments, I want to highlight some points. Both at DRB and HPC staff reports, there was a recommendation made from staff for approval of the home that I've designed for the Yepeses with conditions. I have no problem with the conditions. There are two that I would request at the end of this presentation that they be turned into considerations for discussion. But other than that, I think the home that you see in front of you is the home that they dreamed of, and we've always pursued, and it's always been recommended for approval. The board in front of you here is really an attempt to show you how the home was designed to fit the neighborhood. You're looking at the PowerPoint presentation that focuses on the house. But I take a lot of care from the architecture perspective to design a home that fits the neighborhood, that addresses the neighbors. Believe it or not, the two immediate neighbors on either side of this house are in complete support of this house. They always have support of it, and I think you got a number of letters tonight that we turned in of letters of support. So with that, I just want to reiterate, we met every zoning ordinance that's there at the time and current. So we believe that we're entitled to an approval of this project. Again, we were not able to get vested rights, as has been discussed by legal, only because we were not given the opportunity to present it to DRB within the time frame that we had. We were prepared that day to present at 5 o'clock, and it was at 2 o'clock that I received a call telling me that we were not going to be heard. So that was the situation. In summary of the design review case, I think there's some significant findings that are in your staff report. Primarily, and I'm quoting, the property does not have historic or architectural significance. The property cannot be seen as one of the best architectural specimens in the district. I think anybody who does a windshield survey as it was done will realize that this is not a significant home. The structure is not one of the last remaining examples of its kind. Again, there's an 88% contributory percentage in this property, in this district, and this is not one of the more significant ones. If anything, it's probably the less significant one. And in terms of the project that we're proposing in front of you, the proposed replacement, again I'm quoting, will enhance the character of the historic district. That has been my goal. In terms of designing this, I worked with Mr. Platt, I worked with staff diligently to design a home that had scale, that had massing, that had steps back, that had the roof and the materials, so that it would look like it's a home that belongs in the neighborhood. Hopefully that's what I have in front of you. So again, in terms of the conditions, I would only request that conditions 11 and 13, which 11 references a balcony that is located on the southwest corner, literally directly above the archway, that's the carport, be turned into a consideration. And I say that because the main reason why it's put as a condition is there's a belief that it affects the privacy of the neighbor next door. The neighbor next door actually has no issue with it and has one very small bathroom window that they never open or look through. And my clients feel strongly about the view that they get of downtown Glendale from that particular corner of the house. And in condition 13 has to do with the scale and size of a window in the master bedroom facing the other property, which again the neighbors have no issue with, and they're completely in support of the house. So I think bottom line is this house historically significant? Currently, I think you can determine that it's not. Second, does this home fit the design guidelines that were put in front of us when we designed it? Absolutely. And third, did we meet all the timelines that were put in front of us by the planning department? There were early discussions as to what was needed to be able to put this in front of the DRB. The answer was, if your application is deemed complete prior to the historic district becoming in effect, then that will essentially make it a pipeline project. This is not about trying to be anti-historic by any means. It's about the fact that they started this process back in 2011 in order to build a home that they wanted for their family. They are here. I'd love to have them speak to their experience on this. I meant to bring him in early, but I got too carried away speaking to you guys. So,
does Mr. Graham speak? You still have 10 minutes for your...
Sure. Thank you. And I'm obviously here for any questions you have.
So how much time was left? 2 minutes?
About 5 minutes.
Sorry?
I need about 5.
Well, see, I gave 10 for both of you guys.
And he had 3.
Oh, he had 7.
All right, let me start here.
I can give you another minute. How much is left? 2 minutes? I'll give you 3 minutes, Mr. Graham.
All right. Very well, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Garcia, and Ms. Van Meiden for putting our change letter. The only change was to correct a legal reference. Otherwise, our letter is the same letter that's attached to the appeal. But what it did was to highlight that at the time this was scheduled to be heard before the Design Review Board, the historic district did not legally exist. It did not exist until the next day. The people didn't count their fingers properly when they came up with the date of May the 8th, but in effect, as a matter of law, that district did not exist until May the 9th. Nevertheless, we were knocked off the calendar because of that. And the point here is, and I've put them through my letter, and I don't want to reiterate my letter to a great extent, but to reiterate what Mr. Olivares said, the staff has already rendered its opinion on the fact that this house is not significant. It's not of historical significance. It's not of architectural significance. It's really just a house. And I don't mean to diminish my client's house, but it's not of the kind of house that would be historically significant. And the staff has indicated it's one of the lesser examples even of a ranch-style house in the district itself. And the loss of that structure would not have a significant effect either on the district or on architectural styles that are attempting to be preserved. So it's in athletic terms, it's sort of a no harm, no foul to lose this. Statistically, you use the 88% reference of the houses that are contributors, but if you remove this one house, it doesn't materially change the statistics. That 88% drops to 87% or 86.5%. So it's not a sea change by any means. So by numerical references, this is no substantive impact. The house, our client's house, is at the edge of this property. It looks across the street on the property that is not within the district. And so that neighborhood per se, that micro neighborhood, if you will, with this house included, is not of historical significance. So it is not a particular loss. What we believe should happen here, and again, we're going to have to clean this mess up if it doesn't get cleaned up here, but this is something that happened in a void. That is the inadequacy of the city's regulations to deal with things that are already in the pipeline. Our client started with its original architect in 2010 and went through the city process. It started the city process in 2011. So this isn't for something where we're trying to cram it through at the last minute to beat it out of the gate before the new board came into existence. They were in process. They spent thousands and thousands of dollars following the city's rules at that time, only to get at the end line to have the rules changed. Now, it's terrible for Glendale to have that reputation of changing the rules of the game. So
Thank you, Mr. Graham. If you want to sum
30 seconds. Don't penalize our clients for following the rules. This council should make the decision, and it should make the decisions in accordance with the Design Review Board rules that existed at the time that hearing should have occurred. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mintier? Five minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is Amy Mintier. I'm a partner at the law firm Chatton Brown and Karstens, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the Glendale Historical Society. And other members will speak to historic significance issues, but I'd like to address the legal compliance issues with regards to this project. And the first issue I would like to address is the requirements of the city's municipal code section 30.25.060, which specifically states that demolition of a contributor to a historic district can only be approved after review and consideration of the project under the California Environmental Quality Act. And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what that means. A categorical exemption is an exemption from review under the California Environmental Quality Act. Therefore, by approving a categorical exemption, you are saying that review is not being done and is not being required under the California Environmental Quality Act, which is the exact opposite of what the municipal code requires. What needs to be done to properly consider this project would be for the city to prepare an initial study where it reviews the environmental impacts of this project and uses that initial study to determine which type of environmental review document that should be prepared, either a negative declaration, an MND, or an EIR. And the project cannot be approved as proposed until that review has been completed and considered by the city. The second point I would like to raise deals with CEQA's requirements with regard to this project, and that it prohibits the use of a categorical exemption for this project as well. First, it is the city's burden to demonstrate that the project falls within the identified class of categorical exemptions, and has been claimed that a Class 3 categorical exemption applies to this project. Class 3 exemptions apply to the construction of small new structures. There is nothing within that section of the CEQA guidelines that refers to demolition of structures. Class 3 does not apply to demolition projects and therefore should not be allowed to be used for this project. The second point with regards to the CEQA requirements that I would like to address is that CEQA does not allow for the use of a categorical exemption when mitigation measures are required for a project. CEQA cases have repeatedly held that mitigation measures cannot be used to support a categorical exemption. And the reasoning for this is that reliance on mitigation measures involves an evaluation of whether those measures reduce the impacts of the project, and that evaluative process needs to be done in CEQA's standards and procedures and in an environmental review document, which has not been prepared here. The staff report for this project includes 16 conditions of approval, which are equivalent to mitigation measures, and these mitigation measures are required to mitigate the project's potential impacts to the historic district. These conditions of approval must be evaluated through a CEQA review document, and thus use of a categorical exemption is improper. Further, even if a Class 3 categorical exemption did apply to the project, the CEQA guidelines prohibit the use of categorical exemptions when certain exceptions to those exemptions apply. And there are several exceptions to the exemption that I'd like to address. First is that CEQA prohibits the use of a categorical exemption for a project which may have a significant impact on a historical resource. And there are several, there is substantial evidence within the record that this house does meet CEQA's definition of a historic resource. First, CEQA identifies that historic resources should presumptively include resources that have been identified in a local register of historical resources as the term local register is defined by the Public Resources Code section 5020.1 subsection K, which in that subsection states that a list of properties officially designated as recognized as historically significant by the city pursuant to a local ordinance or resolution. And here, the Brockman Historic District was officially recognized by the city in an ordinance and does identify all of the contributing resources. Additionally, as pointed out by the city attorney, the survey found this to have a status code of 5D1, which the Office of Historic Preservation, the state's experts in historic preservation, if I could have just 30 more seconds. The Office of Historic Preservation has provided technical guidance to other agencies within the state that 5D1, those properties with a 5D1 status code should be considered locally significant historic resources. And finally, there is substantial expert analysis in the record that this property has historic significance due to its association with the city's past and the achievements of the builder. And based on all of this evidence, the property should be considered a historic resource. And further, CEQA also prohibits the use of a categorical exemption when there is a reasonable possibility the activity will have a significant effect on the environment due to unusual circumstances. That substantial evidence of an impact on a historic resource does does show a reasonable possibility, and the unusual circumstances are that Class 3 does not contemplate demolition of a contributor to a historic district. And just in conclusion, all of this analysis that has been done in the staff report, that needs to be done through the CEQA review process, and that hasn't been done, and that is what the Glendale Historical Society is requesting.
Thank you.
And I'm also available if any council member has any questions for me.
We may have questions, but I think we're going to go through all the speakers, and there may be some questions towards the end.
Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker is Lee Smith. Followed by Francesca Smith.
Good evening. We moved to Glendale 7 years ago from Studio City. We were looking for our dream home like so many people. We found our dream neighborhood. We found a nice house, but the Brockmont Park was the nicest neighborhood we found. We just couldn't believe how lucky we were to find a home in this neighborhood. We worked together with some neighbors starting about 5 years ago to develop the Brockmont Park Historic District. We got all the signatures that we needed. We went through the application process, and fortunately the City Council okayed it as I think the fifth or sixth historic district in the City of Glendale. The City of Glendale determined that the property in discussion was a contributor to the district. Now, possibly it might be demolished. I guess my concern is, where does it stop? If this house goes away, what other neighbor can at some point say, well, listen, they got to demolish their house. We'd like to alter ours. We'd like to demolish it, change the character. That's my biggest concern regarding the demolition and the new property. Thank you.
Thank you. Francesca Smith, followed by Catherine Jerka.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. Thanks for entertaining any of this discussion. We appreciate your time. I recognize that you all spend a lot of time looking at all this, as we have. I'm a qualified architectural historian. I have 29 years of experience doing this all over the state, all over the United States. I spend more than an afternoon with CEQA. I spend almost my life with it. Also, the federal enabling law for the protection of historic properties. The discussion of when the historic district was established or not is a little bit moot. I don't know if you all were aware in 1964 when Mount Vernon became a historic property, because that's when our federal regulation came into place. So when you think about it, Mount Vernon wasn't insignificant until 1964. It was just finally recognized at that time. This district took us 5 years of a ton of work and a lot of explaining things to neighbors. One important thing was that it wasn't intended to stop future changes. It was intended to guide appropriate modifications and future growth, and we assured our neighbors of that. This property is an historical resource as defined in CEQA. I spoke to the person at the State Office of Historic Preservation who oversees certified local governments and Section 106 projects. Her words on July 17th were, I hope this will help you. The city of Glendale, she didn't say of Glendale, but she was talking about this, would be better off legally if they treated the district contributor as a historical resource. Period. The splitting hairs of whether or not it's individually eligible is preposterous. It's like saying, are your teeth important? You could lose all the front ones and you'd still have teeth. Because the district, if it loses teeth over time, won't be a district. Also, I have an acquaintance who wrote the ordinance and wrote the CEQA section, and when I asked her about this hair splitting, her answer was, "Oh, please, you know the answer. That is an historical resource." Disagreement among experts requires a preparation of appropriate environmental review. This is a case where there is disagreement among experts. It's City of Carmel by the Sea versus Board of Supervisors, 1986. We are arguing that this will have a significant effect on the environment. It would take a lot of time for me to read the citation. The Historic Building Code applies to this house. Historic districts can use the Historic Building Code in Glendale, correct? So may I have 20 more seconds?
See, my problem is there's a lot of speakers, and I've only extended that to the two primary groups. So I'll give you 2 sentences to wrap up.
Okay. In order to be significant as a district contributor, a property need not be exemplary, the first, the last, or the best example of its type. The project does not meet the Glendale design guidelines or the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation. There's no standard where you build a new house that looks like something that was never there. Those are my very boiled down ideas.
Thank you very much.
Please vote to sustain the HPC's decision. Your HPC. Thanks.
And you raise a good point. If any of the speakers would like to simply give us a short cheer as to which way to vote, that's perfectly fine as well. You don't have to go through a drawn-out analysis, because between the attorneys and the well-informed speakers, I think the issues may get repetitive. So you can simply state, sustain the appeal, deny the appeal, etc. Catherine, followed by, well, I had Efren. I'm going to put Efren aside. I have Arnold Graham. Followed by Richard Lieboff.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Yurka, and I'm here for the Glendale Historical Society to urge you please to uphold the unanimous decision of your Historic Preservation Commission not to allow demolition. Demolition of contributors and their replacement with non-contributors inevitably impacts and erodes the character and quality of historic districts. This is what the districts are designed to prevent. I want to point out that the staff report written specially for you differs in important ways from the report written for the Commission, although the project's the same. Your report wants you to believe that losing contributors doesn't matter. Your report finds that the proposed replacement, quote, would enhance the character of the historic district. This is not what staff wrote to the Commission. Let's be clear. To enhance the character is to improve it. Staff is now asserting that a historic resource from 60 to 100 years ago will be better with a brand new house so long as it's a copy of an old style. This argument makes no sense and violates everything historic districts stand for. Your report says that the project goal of expansion cannot be met through alterations to the existing house. This was not the sentiment among commissioners or staff who spoke at the meeting, who discussed various options for adding on to the house and keeping it a contributor. We would support the owner's efforts to do this. What the city attorney basically said was that you have no right to vote against demolition unless you have hard evidence that this is an individual historic resource, which we think it is. But even if you disagree, it is a contributor to a historic district and must be treated as such. That fact is sufficient for you to deny demolition. Which brings me to the final item that was left out of the report, specially written for you. The Commission's report by staff made this case against demolition, quote, "The building is an intact example of one of the most important architectural styles found in the district. The survey noted it had a high level of integrity. The clear orientation of the guidelines is to encourage the retention of contributing structures. Allowing demolition of a part of the original fabric is contrary to the purpose of historic districting." I urge you to follow that argument, staff's argument against demolition, and please vote to uphold the HPC's decision. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Richard Lieboff, followed by David Gupser.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Najarian, other city council members, and city staff. We've heard a lot about this issue tonight, and this home was one of 52 contributing homes in the district. The ranch-style residence, like many other diverse styles in the district, comprise the historical significance of the area, and of course, it was part of the criteria for its designation. The district, of course, began in 1910 when 1605 Arbor Drive was built and the Clock Tower House, which is certainly representative of the area, was added in 1914. The district was created because of its significant homes, but also because of its landscape and layout of the area that was very amply shown in Rather's 171-page report. I have, however, some PowerPoint slides that I'd like to present to you this evening to give you my perspective on the district, since I am, and my perspective since I am right behind their home. Can I have that, please? Thank you. Next one. That is the look down my driveway towards their property. As you can see, there have been bushes put up over the years, which is very nice, and I commend them for that, because there was a very ugly-looking broken tennis court. Next one, please. That's the tennis court that's there. That's been a disaster for many years. They've lived there for 8 years, and of course, they've had time to replace or change all this. Next one. That looks in towards the back. Next one. Again, a back kind of view of the tennis court. That's the front of the house, and I would urge that, as others have said, that this is a historically significant home. It is not a house that does not meet that criteria. Next one. Here is the home as we see it today with the carport. And, you know, we keep hearing about this carport, and I would have to say, if there's a carport and they want to replace it with carport, why are we putting garages in the back of the house where they would not be driving through to the carport? There should be, carports are generally for drive-through to your garages, so I would add that. Next one, please. This is looking down the street of Arbor Drive, and as you can see, it is a very lovely area, although there's been some changes there that need some improvements in the next door house. Next one. That's from my balcony looking down at their house. Next one. Again, looking down at their house. And then I think there's a final one. That is looking down the street. Of course, we have no garages on that street whatsoever. It is a very tranquil, pleasant area. Adding garages is not going to improve the look of that area. Thank you very much. The original Brockmont Park, as you can see, is located there. I'll wrap it up. Therefore, I urge you, as others have urged you, once again to sustain the HP Commission's decision to not deny the application to demolish the 1555 Valley View Road home. Though the process has begun to amend, though a process has begun to amend the municipal code pertaining to the design review requirements for projects submitted during the processing, that is when it's in the pipeline, of a historic district overlay zone application. In this case, there was a convergence, as City Manager Ochoa has put it.
Mr. Lieboff, you need to...
Okay. I'm finished.
Conclude with a final
I am.
Few words.
Final few words is that we cannot await the change of the planning department, and we cannot allow for the demolition of this project at this time. Thank you.
David Gubser. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Followed by Robert Snyder.
Good evening. honorable council members and city staff. My name is Dave Gubser. I'm a longtime resident of Brockmont Park Historic Area District. My family moved there in 1963. I went to Toll, I went to Hoover, I went to Glendale College. I think I've been there longer than anybody that's there now, except for maybe one resident. What can I tell you that you haven't already heard? To me, as I look around that neighborhood, and with the exception of just a few homes, it's basically the same as it was back in the early 60s when we moved there. And to me, that's very comforting. I look around, it's my home, it's where I grew up, it's what I think of as what home is. And I think that house is very nice looking. I knew the Hoggans, who were the owners of Hoggans Pharmacy, who owned that house, and played tennis on that tennis court with their children too. So I have a lot of fond memories of it. And to me, to tear down a contributor and replace it with a very large and grand pretender to be a vintage home is going in the wrong direction. I just don't know why we would commemorate our new district by tearing down a contributing house. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Robert Snyder.
Council members, I'm Bob Snyder. I just need 1 minute. It's cold and everybody, I'm sure, wants to go home, including me. I live in the Brockmont Park Historical District. I was one of the original co-applicants for the district. And I've worked hard with many of the neighbors for many years to establish this district. So my background is in real estate as an investor and developer of commercial, multifamily, and residential properties in Glendale and the West Side. I totally understand that growing families need to have a larger space. We moved to the area for precisely the same reason. We needed a bigger house to accommodate a growing family, and I am completely in favor of this family building a bigger house. They should be able to do it. However, given my background, I know this can be accomplished at that property by expanding the current house into the large backyard that they have. It's a 15,000 square foot lot. There's plenty of room. It is a contributing house to the district. We don't want oversized mansions in our neighborhood. And I'm sure and hopeful that the city and the Historic Preservation Commission and the neighborhood and neighbors would work with this property owner in helping them add on to their existing house while still maintaining the historic nature of the district. And listening to a couple of the other speakers, I kind of see a slippery slope here. I mean, where does it stop? Can I tear my house down and build a big house? There's hearsay that some of the other neighbors are talking about it, the small single-family homes, tearing them down. I mean, at some point, a line has to be drawn in the sand, I think. I think that this house is now one of the significant examples of a ranch-style house. I think it is the significant example in the area. And finally, I think that this project is totally oversized mansion for the area. That's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I did have cards from the Yeppeses. Do you want to speak separately from your representatives? Okay. I have one from Eric and Christina. And then that would conclude the speaker cards, except for a 5-minute summary from your representative.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Najarian, council members, and staff. I think I can safely speak for my husband that we're not here because of the historic district. We have an upcoming election in a few months in the city, and there are many proposed issues that may or may not pass. The law is written for what is passed, and at the time that we started our construction project several years ago, there was a set of laws and procedures and guidelines which we followed to the letter. We worked intricately with Jay Platt, taking direction and guidance from him. We designed a home that was appropriate for our specific lot size, maybe not for everybody else's, that asked for no zoning variances, no code exemptions, and was 100% in compliance with the guidelines at the time and the zoning laws now. While I appreciate that many of the people here are here under the historic issue, we are here because we were denied the due process at the time that our hearing was yanked from us 3 hours before the day of our hearing. And we were heard by a committee that had no authority to vote on our issue because the historic district was not yet legally in effect at the time that they ruled on us. And we were not given the proper due process that every other pipeline project that has been heard in Glendale has. And that is why we're here today. We are citizens, we are taxpayers, we are homeowners, and we have the rights to be treated fairly with the laws of the city of Glendale that everybody else has. This is not about CEQA or anything else. This is about restoring the due process and legal responsibilities the city has to homeowners. We have other homes on our street that are similar in size. The houses across the street from us are older, have more character, and are deliberately and specifically cut off from the Brockmont Park Historic District, as are houses further at Valley View that are also of greater significant architectural influence. The ranch-style house is only a small part of the contributors, whereas Spanish homes and other style of homes are heavily weighed into in the equation as well. And this has become about preserving a ranch house, and instead this hearing has to be about the due process that we were denied by the city. At the time of our hearing, there was no historical preservation committee that should have ruled on us. There was no Brockmont Park Historic District. It was only proposed district that had not been voted on and had not been in effect. And by not following the proper due process, you're setting an establishment that every other proposal should weigh in on what someone does at this time. Thank you.
Okay, to conclude the speakers, Mr. Olivares or Mr. Graham, do you need 5 minutes? Don't take all the time and leave 2 minutes for Mr. Graham.
No, this is going to be very quick. I want to first of all respond to the comment about a mansion. Again, on the staff report, there's a comparison of homes in the area. This home is well within the square footage of a lot of homes in that area, so this is by no means larger than most of the homes there. And I want to reiterate, just like Christina expressed, we followed the rules, the zoning guidelines. We're not asking for variances. We're not asking for anything. We simply follow the rules at the time before this was the historic district in effect. And that's what we did, and that's what we complied with. That's what we paid fees for. That's what we did, and that's why we're here. On top of that, hopefully, I've designed a home that will be compatible in the neighborhood. Again, that is my architectural philosophy. It could be called a replacement. It could be called a copy, be what it may. I am of the position that I want to work with staff to make sure we design a home and we build a home that suits the neighborhood. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public speakers on this item. Mr. Garcia.
I'm not sure if the mayor and council has questions, but we're happy, as far as any of the legal issues that were raised, we're happy to answer them. As far as any questions that were raised that you would like us to respond to or address, there are a couple points I think that are probably worthy of a response from either our office or CDD, as it relates to some of the vested rights issues, as it relates to allegation of bias. It's council's discretion to allow me, but I think it would help at least clear the record and I'd like to address one of the points that was made with respect to one of the comments that was made about Ms. Nukian's presentation. So.
Okay, so there are three things I'd like to hear from, and maybe you were going to cover them anyway. There were the several CEQA issues that were raised by Ms. Mintier. The other is the vested rights issue, and you said a conflict of interest.
It's a question of bias, and I can address that.
Bias issue. So
sure, let me address
those, and if my colleagues would like any other interpretation, then after those three, I open it up to them to request.
Sure. Let me start off by addressing some of the specific comments, and then I'm going to have Ms. Nukian address the CEQA comments that were raised. So with respect to the issue of when the when the ordinance approving this particular district went in, as it relates to this application, the ordinance was adopted April 8th. In our view, it took effect May 8th. In the applicant's view, it took effect May 9th. It's 30 days. We have a difference of opinion as how you calculate the 30 days, but in our view, it's May 8th. With respect to, there was a contention in the letter by Mr. Graham that one of the DRB commissioners, Mr. Mardian, moved that it be transferred over to the Historic Preservation Commission. That's indeed not what happened. What happened is that planning staff made a recommendation that the item be continued from May 8th to May 22nd. And I'm not sure whether it was so that planning and legal could review that issue, but it was continued. So all Mr. Mardian did was make the motion to continue it at the recommendation of staff. So to the allegation that Mr. Mardian was, because he was on the Glendale Historic Society, was moving it for that purpose, that's not accurate. With respect to once it got to the May 20, once it passed the deadline or the effective date of the ordinance for Brockmont Park, as it relates to any vested right, there is, in our view, there's no vested right to proceed with any particular type of review process unless and until someone has received approval or a building permit of some type. Usually, and Mr. Foy had actually alluded to this last week when we discussed addressing this pipeline issue, that this particular ordinance did not have a pipeline discussion. So when May 8th came and went, we believe we were legally obligated to treat this as under the rules for historic districts, which is why it was then transferred from DRB to the Historic Preservation Commission. We could debate the policy merits of that, whether that was fair, but legally we think that was the correct resolution of that. Let me finish, and then maybe you can have some questions for that. There was also an indication in the correspondence received from Mr. Graham that because all or the majority of the members of the Historic Preservation Commission are members of the Glendale Historic Society, that was somehow improper bias. And in our view, the cases say that bias is unacceptable if there's high probability of unacceptable bias. It doesn't have to necessarily rise to the level of actual bias, but just being a member of the Glendale Historical Society, in our view, does not disqualify those members from participating in the decision unless they were actively involved in the advocacy against this particular project. We don't have any information that occurred here. Some of them have been involved in the Historic Society at some point. They may or may not be dues-paying members, but assuming for the sake of argument that they are, that does not preclude them from participating in this particular decision. With respect to, as I mentioned before, even if there were procedural irregularities with this application, and I do not believe that there were, the fact that this appeal is now being heard by the council is the opportunity to correct those, it's a de novo hearing to address all those irregularities. In essence, because you are now, in essence, the review authority for this application, any review irregularities that occurred before are corrected by this appeal. And that's what the cases hold. Even if a court were to find, for example, that there was some irregularity, and again, we don't believe that there were, the only remedy would have been to have a new hearing. By you having this hearing today, we are addressing that particular issue. And then I'm going to have Ms. Nukian address some of the CEQA issues that were raised by the Council for the Historic Society. But I do want to correct a statement that was made, and that is a statement was made by one of the speakers that our office is saying you can't deny this project, and that's not what we said. What we said is, as it relates to CEQA, we do not believe there's substantial evidence that this house is a historic resource under CEQA, and that we do not believe that demolition of this house would materially impact the district under CEQA, even though we agree that the district is itself a historic resource. But that does not mean that we do not believe that the council has discretion to approve or to deny this project. As Mr. Duong gave in his presentation, there's a list of factors which the council is authorized to balance as part of the review process. And I'll just read the part that, again, there's a list of factors, but essentially the review authority, which is you, may determine that the demolition constitutes an irreplaceable loss to the quality and character of the neighborhood and the city. And then that you consider all those factors. You don't have to, you as the decision maker, give weight to those particular factors, but you're not bound by one particular factor or another. You are allowed as the decision maker to weigh those in their totality. So with that, I'm going to have Ms. Nukian address the more specific CEQA issues that were raised in the presentation by counsel for the Historic Society.
So the first claim that was made is that under Glendale Municipal Code 30.25.060, we cannot use or rely on a categorical exemption until we perform review and consideration under the California Environmental Quality Act. That is the plain language of our ordinance. The interpretation that the Historical Society Council has given this is to suggest that this phrase, after review and consideration, automatically implies that some CEQA document must be prepared and an exemption may not be used. This is, we believe, an incorrect interpretation of our ordinance. The more logical approach is to interpret it as, yes, this requires review and consideration under CEQA. That requires CEQA as a whole to be considered, including all the available exemptions, the definition of a historic resource. Taken all that together, we have done quite a bit of review and consideration under CEQA. We have followed 30.25.060. Quite notably, Section 30.25.060 does not refer to impact review or preparation of a CEQA document. These are normally the terms of art which would specifically suggest that an initial study under CEQA is required, leading to some sort of impact review. Adopting the interpretation urged by the Glendale Historical Society's Council would mean that every building in a historic district must be considered a historic resource, and that would plainly be contrary to the Historic District Handbook, design guidelines, the code, which anticipates that some buildings within district may not be individually historic, and some may not even be contributory. So that's 30.25.060. We just flatly disagree with the Historical Society's conclusion that that phrase means automatically a CEQA disclosure document must be prepared. We've done the review and consideration under CEQA. The second point is they claimed that we cannot use a Class 3 categorical exemption because this exemption does not talk about demolition specifically. That is contrary to case law. There is a case specifically of Valley View Advocates that the court upheld the city's determination that they could use a categorical exemption to allow demolition of some structures that they later remanded back for reasons unrelated to the categorical exemption, but basically categorical exemption for demolition is allowed. It is allowed. It's been substantiated by case law. Mitigation measures. The Council for the Glendale Historical Society stated that there are 16 conditions of approval, and these are really mitigation measures. Mitigation measures assume significant impacts. Here, there are none. These are conditions of approval for a design review project. These come up routinely before council. These are not mitigation measures. These are related to the design. These are related to site planning. These are not mitigation measures. And as far as the exceptions to the exemptions. I want to address the first one. They are claiming that because the structure was given a 5D1 classification in the Brockmont Park Historic Resources Survey, this means that it's a historic resource. Actually, 5D1 means that the structure is classified as a contributor to a designated district. What that means is the district is the resource and the house is part of that resource. It's a contributor to the resource. And this is straight out of the California State Office of Historic Preservation Technical Assistance Bulletin 8, which they have themselves cited. It actually makes a distinction between those properties that are contributors, those that are individually eligible for listing, and those that are both. In fact, there is a Category 3CB that says appears eligible for California Register both individually and as a contributor. All of the 5D codes, in contrast to other codes like 5S and 5B codes, refer to the contributory status of a property to a district, not the property's individual status. So clearly there's a specific distinction made in these codes, a very careful distinction, that there are contributors, there are individual resources, and then there are properties that are both. The other points, briefly, we cannot use a categorical exemption, they're claiming, because this is a historical resource. It's sort of going back to the beginning. That is the question, is this a historical resource? So they're kind of using the circular argument there, thank you. We agree the district is a resource. They mentioned that this property is in a historic. Yes, we agree with that. Again, the point is not that we don't agree that the district is a resource. The point is that is this house, the demolition of this house, going to materially alter that district? And as far as, again, class, they brought up a point that there are unusual circumstances here that do not allow us to rely on this categorical exemption, and that unusual circumstance is that this Class 3 exemption does not contemplate demolition. And again, we addressed that. I addressed that earlier with the case law that is that point, refutes that point entirely. If you have any other questions, please let me know. I know I went through that fast.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
The whole CEQA analysis, is that conditioned on the fact that the historic overlay district was adopted? If that was never adopted, would there be any CEQA analysis involved for this house?
There would have been, yes.
There still would be.
There still would have been an analysis, and it probably would have been determined to be exempt, just as it is.
Yeah, you'd probably just be looking at whether the house itself was a historic resource.
Okay. Slightly different, but still there would be a
just be half of the analysis that we did. You just
okay. And the only thing I want to say is this whole deemed complete argument. 2 months ago, I sat and I fought with Hassan, our planning director, and staff over the park and library impact fees that were going to be put in effect on some certain date. And lo and behold, project after project were reviewed and deemed complete. Some were just a few days before the implementation of the ordinance, some were maybe a few weeks before. But the answer that I got then was these projects, and this is the downtown development that we were talking about, it's not in a neighborhood, but the answer was once it's deemed complete, then they've done everything they need to do, despite the fact that it hasn't gone to any review before the council for stage 1 and stage 2. So whether that was specifically in the ordinance for the parks and library impact fees, I think it still set a custom and practice for this city to accept when, at the time that a project or an application is deemed complete, that they're subject to the laws on the books at that time.
Understood. Again, actually, it's a good example. That ordinance, as you already recognized, did specifically define what the pipeline project was going to be. Our concern was once the effective date of the Brockmont Historic District took effect, if that project had gone to DRB, I think project opponents would have had a strong argument that DRB was without authority to take action on that application because there was nothing in the ordinance saying if you were in the pipeline before it became effective, you go to DRB. And as we acknowledge, that was an oversight, but we were kind of stuck with the deck that we were dealt with the hand that we had. We had to go with it, and that rule, unless you state otherwise, you apply the rule that's in effect at the time you're going to go. And unfortunately, they got caught in the middle of that. But when May 9th or May 8th came around and didn't have an approval, the approving body for that application was HPC. It was no longer DRB.
Yeah, but it was the DRB that continued it, though.
Understood.
So they have clean hands in that issue. I mean, they were ready. They say they were ready to go.
Right.
And presumably they're not the ones who asked for the continuance. But when the hearing body kicks it over, and
the way I would look at it is, okay, we could have done that. We could have gone to DRB. We could have had them approve it. And I think the opponents of the project would have had a relatively strong argument that DRB was without authority to do that. And then we're back in the same place. We looked at the risk of both propositions, and we felt this was legally
other questions
more beneficial.
I just wanted to add. I thought I read in the staff report that there wasn't even there's no real proof that design review would have okayed the project. Anyway.
Oh, that's always. I mean, that's always the case.
I have a couple of questions. Wait. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, we lost quorum. Sorry.
Oh.
I'm out.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was looking down.
I thought he said, up. Go ahead. All right, so we'll wait.
Let's save your thought.
Okay.
He's back.
Oh, my
We're
God.
back on the record.
Okay.
Now you're going to ask.
Now I can, just a couple of questions. When did the appellant know when the neighborhood was in the process of going into historic districting? I mean, they knew when. It's been 5 years in the process.
We cannot speak for the appellant. I think if you would like to ask the appellant.
Okay, I would.
And again, if you want to ask the appellant, that's to make that record clear. That's certainly within your purview. I just want to, again, we're sort of dealt with the hand now that we have, which is that it went to HPC. They acted.
All right.
We think pursuant to lawful authority, and now it's before you.
Okay, then can I ask Jay Platt a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, Jay. I think it was Mr. Graham that mentioned, or maybe it was Mr. Alvarez that mentioned that the windshield survey doesn't mean much. And I thought that I remembered in the HPC hearing, you say that the survey was binding, that it is a valuable survey, that the survey does qualify a contributor, and that it is binding.
Yeah,
Am I correct?
The reconnaissance survey for historic districts identifies contributors, non-contributors, identifies the period of significance, and assesses status codes. It does not identify individually eligible properties for the Glendale Register or any other register.
Okay, so that survey was legitimate as far as the contributor.
It conforms with all of our other historic district surveys.
Okay, and I also thought that I read somewhere where it doesn't matter what the house looks like, what the location is, what the number of homes that have been approved in that historic district, or the percentage. None of that matters in the integrity, in judging the integrity of the neighborhood, or as far as our decision goes.
To meet our historic district ordinance requirements, 60% of the properties have to be contributors. We do individual integrity assessments of each property, and that plays into whether it's a contributor or not.
Well, I think their attorney said that didn't matter that because there were 80 or 52 out of 57 homes, it was more than 80%, I think, of the homes are. And he said that didn't matter. I'm just asking if it matters.
It matters to us as we experience historic districts. The reason we have the 60% threshold is when you have something lower than that, you don't really have that feeling of contiguous historic character that kind of creates the feel of a district. The more contributors you have, the more historic character the district has, the fewer kind of interlopers you would have. But we recognize that no neighborhood has 100% contributors.
Right. Okay, thank you. That's all for now. Oh, well.
I'm ready to talk.
Okay, and the question was answered that they have no vested right at this point. Okay.
If I have no questions, I'll make my comments.
Let me just see if I have any just questions for clarification. Okay, back to the issue of bias that you, the definition was if it's an unacceptable bias. It's unacceptable bias if there's a probability of bias that's unacceptable.
Unacceptable probability.
Like that.
Unacceptable probability of bias. I should have said that.
So how does that?
It is on a case-by-case basis. There was a case called Nasha versus City of Los Angeles, which is the main case, which it's not. You don't have to show actual bias. I mean, the only way to actually show actual bias is someone says, I'm biased, or if you actually take their depo and they say I'm biased, so it's obviously it's less than that. But it's more than they have some relationship with a proponent or opponent of the project, or they're involved in that. The way I read that particular case, it involved, for example, the City of Los Angeles, a planning commissioner who voted against the project had written a newsletter article for her homeowners association blasting the project, and the court said that's an unacceptable level of bias.
We don't have any of that here.
As far as I know, there's no indication that any of the commissioners that voted on this project were involved to that extent in the Glendale Historical Society's opposition to the project. They are, or I think they are all members, or the ones that voted no, but there was no indication that we have nothing in the record that states that they were involved in the opposition to the project.
How about the creation of the district? That doesn't necessarily create a bias.
No, it doesn't. And let me add, too, that it's not strange or unusual that we would have members of our Historic Preservation Commission who are involved in the Glendale Historic Society. I would submit to you that obviously they were involved in the creation of the district, in the creation of the commission, and it was not unexpected that we would have. In fact, I think it's in the code that commissioners should have some expertise or interest in historic preservation issues. So it should not be surprising to us that you're going to have people who are associated with the Historic Society who are going to be on our commission.
Yeah, but when we were doing that code, we had not bestowed upon them the design review duties. I mean, it was more of an advisory and less determinative board and commission. And all of a sudden, in the creation of the districts, we gave them all of a sudden this design review board. So I'm okay. I mean, I understand. I'm not arguing with you, but I'm just thinking out loud here.
And I, just on a superficial level, I guess I can understand the argument, but under the law, it requires something more than them just having paid dues to Glendale Historic Society, and that's all that the information that we had that was put into the record is that they paid dues and they're members.
Could a judge sit on a case if he had that type of relationship?
No, but the cases are pretty clear. It treats a judge. You don't look at the standards for judicial bias the same way you would look at a bias for this type of issue.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Before you close the hearing, just ask that you incorporate all the documents that were submitted as part of this hearing, including the information that was handed out by Mr. Olivares, by Mr. Graham. I think both proponents and opponents submitted documents that were submitted. I just ask that you include those as part of the record before you close the hearing.
I have one question, and I read that it did not come before us today, but I think I read it in the newspaper. Did the Historical Preservation Commission express any reluctance or in making their decision? No. Did I read somewhere in the paper that they felt this was somehow unfair, but this is the way that they had to act? I
read it.
Can someone?
There are some commissioners in the room if you'd like to ask them.
Yeah. Who are they?
I mean, I remember reading that. That's just something that comes to my mind. It wasn't presented here today, but is there a commissioner? HPC commissioner? Did you sit in on Mr. Morgan? Come in, sir. And were you in on this hearing?
Yes, I was. And I voted on it.
And were there, am I correct in recalling that there was some trepidation on your part? Once you made the decision, it's like, well, this is what we had to do. We don't think it's exactly fair, but this is what the results were.
Well, I personally felt that what the thing for the Historic Preservation Commission, the rules were specific, so we voted exactly as what I voted exactly with what the rule said, which was that we couldn't allow the demolition of this property.
Was there any other comment outside of that? I mean, I'm trying to recall. I could Google it up, I guess, but some commissioners were saying, gee, I don't think this was...
Well, I don't think
not
anybody...
happy with it, but this is what we had to do.
Oh, I think... I can only speak for myself. I wasn't particularly happy with the fact that we weren't allowing them to because of the fact that there's 88% and this was taking it down to 86%, and I felt that we were kind of hand-tied in what we could and could not do. I can't speak for any of the other commissioners. The other ones they felt they weren't hand-tied and they did what they had to do.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions of anyone. Mr. Weaver, if you'd like to kick off the discussion.
Sure.
And the public hearing is closed.
Okay, in cases like this, sometimes I write down my thoughts so I stay in some logical sequence of what I'm saying. And based on the conversations, I wrote down a few more things which will be out of context probably. But in starting, I call this the preamble to try to set the stage for this. I've lived in Glendale over 75 years. I've driven through virtually every part of Glendale more than once, all over. I've seen beautiful historic type homes everywhere and hope someday that the beautiful ones I was seeing would be protected from destruction. Because I've seen some beautiful homes torn down in past decades. And when you get there, I mean, you can look at Bob's Big Boy. It was torn down, now it's a strip mall. You know, there was no historic district then, no historic features, no nothing. But back in 2006, in July, I voted finally to create the historic district ordinance. Because I thought, boy, okay, we got it going now. Now we're going to start to be able to save different districts. And so far, I voted on all 6 historical districts with relish. I think I voted for every single nominated house for historical designation. And there's a whole lot more out there that should have historical designation, even though they're not in historical districts. So you should understand, based on those votes, what they tell you about how I feel about my life. This is about the city I was born in, raised in, and still live in. I've received a number of emails on this project, as expected, and I thank everyone for expressing their feelings. And I studied this extensively. I spent all day today. I spent the weekend a number of hours, and last week talking to staff, researching, doing whatever I had to do. And on the other side of it, I have to express my, I don't know if it's frustration or sadness, that can be summed up in 2 groups. One, a historic preservation commissioner from the city of Pasadena, emailing us, telling us that we were wrong, that the commissioner also said that the city staff erred on CEQA. I wish other cities would stay out of our business. We're perfectly capable. I don't know who told her to write. Also, I might as well say, because a number of people know it, I'm running for re-election. And I I received veiled threats. If I voted to allow this house to go, I would lose all of Northwest Glendale votes. Now, how do you think I feel? I've been here 18 years. I've served the last 4 years. I think I've made a lot of good votes in that time. And you're telling me if I vote for this house, you're going to throw me out? Maybe you are. But I don't think that is a very good way of doing business. Look at the encompassing of everything I've done. But that was sad. It hurt me. Did I do all my homework? I asked questions. The staff visited the sites. I went through all the streets. I visited the home and the yard, just like the Historic Commission did, the Historic Preservation Commission did, like my colleagues were all invited to do. I don't know if they went. I did all the same things. And I have tried to do this without emotion or predetermining who is going to be happy with my vote or who is not. I've got to do what I think is best for my city. To not believe that, you're telling me that with all my knowledge of historic district issues, that I am still incapable of making an intelligent decision on this application. Don't buy that. As to the project, this house, I'll throw one of the caveats I wrote in 1954 when this house was built. I was in Glendale High School. So if it's historic, what does that make me? Ancient.
Prehistoric, no.
Prehistoric? No, not that far back.
I didn't mean that.
No. I heard you. Wait till I see your husband. Art, I'm coming to talk to you. Anyhow, on the findings, the one on historic or architectural significance. A lot of this is repetition, but I had written this down before I heard this because I studied it. 13 out of the 59 homes are ranch style. Okay, 13. Valley View cannot be seen as one of the best architectural specimens in the district. The material, the palette, the detailing provided an austere example of the ranch style. The front facade is plain stucco. Windows were simply punched into openings without any decorative trim or detailing. In conclusion, is that there are several better architectural examples of ranch style found amongst the other contributors in the district. They have richer material palette, providing greater texture and color variety. 2. Structure is not critical to the integrity or character of the historic district. This residence exhibits a ranch style in its simplest form and detailing. 3. Whether the structure is one of the last remaining examples of its kind in the neighborhood, city, region, state, or nation. 13 ranch-style homes are in the historic district, and therefore it cannot be considered to be one of the last remaining examples of its kind anywhere, simply because it dropped from 88% to 86%. Doesn't faze me at all. Does the new house enhance the character of the historic district? 20 of the 59 homes in the district are Spanish colonial revival style. In fact, it complements the houses across the street, which are Spanish too. If you're driving up Valley View, look to the right and look what could be to the left. They're complementary. It's on the northeast edge of the historic district, almost the furthest removed you can get in the district. And I'll say it, and maybe I got it somewhere else, but I look at each project that comes to us individually. It's a separate case. You could bring me a like one in the middle or some other location in there, and I might be 100% for keeping it. I'm looking at the conditions and the geography, everything, in coming into my conclusion. Under secret review, does not qualify for individual historic designation on the Glendale Register. Well, I've heard attorneys this side, attorneys from this side, attorneys from the city. I have an attorney sitting over running the meeting, an attorney giving advice, and I'm just an engineer.
And a good meeting it's been, I might add.
Darn right, it's been good so far. The problem is, having said for years here, is that, no offense, I need attorneys, I love attorneys, but attorney represents their client. So the opposition attorney gets up, he's got his opinions, or her opinions. The other side gets up, same thing. But the city attorneys and counsel have nothing to gain either way. So if I have to say, okay, which way do I go? I'm going to satisfy with what I'm hearing from the attorneys on staff who don't have a horse in the race. That's just me. I'm just saying. And of course, this finding has been challenged from a commissioner in Pasadena. So am I to let emotions get in the way rather than accept our professional staff's opinion on CEQA? I've just said yes. I'll take our opinion. Much has been made of the timing on this project. I looked at the timeline in the report. In my opinion, pieces were missing in the timeline. The owners bought their house in July of 2005. The historic ordinance was approved in 2006. Rockmont area residents came to the HPC on December 13, 2011, seeking HPC to review nomination for a historic district overlay. The HPC authorized the first petition, request for survey. But I want to know more. I called Mr. Olivares and I said, okay, I know that Mr. Olivares, you took over. You have a contract on the date that you took over as the architect of record. Yes. So there was another architect before you. Yes. When did they sign a contract with that? I'd like to see the record, that date. Mr. Olivares took over in September 12, 2013. When did the original architect sign in? June 9, 2011. The first time that Brockmont, that I have a record of, that the Brockmont folks came to the HPC was later than that. Much later. So, excuse me. So the date was set as July 1, and they referred to a meeting on June 6 of 2011, 6 months before the nomination papers came out. Now, was there talk amongst them? Should the homeowner have known what the residents were doing? Did they come to his door? Whatever. I have nothing to prove anyway. There's been no evidence to say that the owners knew that all the others were getting together to form this district. I can only work with what I have and the facts I've developed. So all I can conclude, they were already underway to build the house they planned to build. I hired an architect. That architect didn't work out. Spent 2 years with him or something. Then they hired Mr. Olivares, who finished it up. Now, how can I draw the conclusion that the Rockmont people putting together told him and he knew? I can't do that. We don't even know if a district would be created. How long were we supposed to make the homeowners wait to find out if there's going to be a district created? Doesn't make any sense at all. It's an unreasonable conclusion. Another comment I'll throw in. Why didn't they do something early? I think it was in that context. Well, I remember when I built my house, which is Spanish, in 1971, a month after the earthquake of 71, and we moved in September the same year. We had drapes on our living room windows because we didn't have the money to put drapes up. And we got criticism from the neighbors. You know, it's an expensive proposition buying a house just to get in the door, not alone trying to decorate it or whatever. So I remember going through that. Their house was contracted for and was going through the divine. I already said that. So it comes down to the fact that they started back in 11. They have done everything required of them, met all the codes, all the requirements. It's sitting on the edge of a district. There's their FAR is 0.31. There's another one with 0.33, 0.2525. The average is lower. Setback, they're setback more than other houses in the area. There's at least 3 houses that are almost the same size as the house they're proposing. The house layout, the current house has a garage right on the property line. Under the new plan, that garage will be removed, which is good to get it away from the property line. I see nothing wrong with putting the garage up in Arbor. I mean, I do the same thing. They have done all the setbacks required, the front, the sides. I see nothing wrong. I looked at the walls, the retaining walls that are out there now. Crooked, broken, they should all be replaced. There's some chain link fences there that should be replaced. Tennis court, oh, come on. I was told everything was in great shape when they bought it. Those walls did not move in the last 5-6 years. And that tennis court did not start cracking in the last 5 years. It's been settling, and there's been movement in the soil over the years, many years. So it all should be taken out anyhow. See, hands crossed back there. I'm giving my opinion. My opinion is as good as anybody else's in here. I mean, I can see you all out there. So summing it all up, I've concluded I'm going to vote for the demolition and the building of the new house. Only thing, I don't agree with all the conditions. I don't mind seeing that up patio on the top floor, off the master bedroom. Heck, I'd want the same thing. Gives a view of the city. I see nothing wrong with that. They have a couple other what's the one I'm thinking of, 11? Roof deck, okay. There's 2 that are conflicting on the one bedroom. Oh, it's the master bedroom with the fireplace. Both of them are contradictory. One says to remove one of the windows. The other says make it smaller. You have to have 1/8 of the floor space has to be window. So those kind of things can't happen. I understand. They prove it. Mr. Oliver says he can work with staff on what these conditions should be. But what you're seeing there is going to be modified to some extent by staff. So I think it's a good addition. People drive there. I think they'll look to the right and see the Spanish-style homes. They'll look to this and they'll see this. And the neighbors on either side are happy with it. So I think the people deserve a break. They've been caught up in a system, and last week, what did we do? We put in that pipeline thing to go into this ordinance, and for every every preservation ordinance in the future, be no more of this silliness. So this one, it's different. I rambled too long, but I hope I got everything out that I wanted to say. Let my colleagues do the talking now and see where we're at. Thank you.
I know it's getting late, so I'll try to do this as quickly as I can. I find it ironic that I've been agonizing over this decision for over 2 weeks, and it will all boil down to about 5 minutes of a decision discussion. First, I want to thank staff for the comprehensive and I think objective reports that you've done on this controversial issue. My thanks to everybody here tonight that came in and gave your opinions. All the residents who wrote emails. I've watched the historic preservation meeting. I've spoken with staff. I've done everything that Mr. Weaver has done. I visited the site, talked to the architect, talked to the owners, and I know that no one is going to be happy with the decision, or someone's going to be unhappy with the decision tonight. That's for sure. I do feel for the homeowners in their quest to build the home that they really want, and I also understand the concerns of the historic preservationists. We have a city that has a wealth of historic neighborhoods, and it's the reason why people come to live here and to buy homes here, because we have these beautiful neighborhoods, and that's what makes this so difficult. So I'm going to base my decision on 3 aspects. One is the legal aspect, one is the intent of the guidelines, and the other is the moral issue. At first would be the legal aspect, and the city attorney, Van Meiden, and the attorneys this evening have confirmed that even though the application to the DRB was deemed to be complete, the homeowners have no vested right to demolish. The intent, if we look at whether this demolition of a contributing home and a high integrity home, as according to some of the staff reports, and the construction of a new house comply with the intent of the Historic District guidelines. I have read and I have listened to convincing arguments on both sides of this question. However, in my opinion, it does not meet the intent of the Historic District guidelines. The decision could set a precedent. To demolish this house could set a precedent that I think would be very unfortunate in our city. Other contributors may want to come in and do the same. And we have people that have worked very, very hard, and for 5 years, to get this district approved by council. And I want to add here, Mr. Weaver, Councilman Weaver, that I did check to see if the homeowners had been to any of the meetings, or if they did know about the probability of the historic district, and they did. They were in attendance, so they did know.
In 2011?
I'm not sure what we could ask, but I don't know when. But when it was in the pipeline. So we must not negate the work that everyone has done. According to staff, we cannot base our decision on the percentage or the number of contributor homes in a district. This would result in chipping away at the districts. The result could be disastrous. Nor can we base our decision on location of the contributor or what the appearance of the home is. The design of the Spanish replacement home comes into question. Staff indicates that the home does not positively contribute to the neighborhood. It's at odds with the purpose and the intent of the Historic District Overlay Zone. We must remember, according to the guidelines, architectural style prevails in a historic district. We don't just lose a contributor in this case, we gain a house that does not fit. This is reinforced by the staff report to the Historic Preservation Commission. In reading the staff the report, where they outlined the findings for denying demolition, and in particular, and I have the report and we were given this report, First, it says, for one comment, though the loss of this contributor will not affect the eligibility of the district, there is nothing so compelling about the replacement project, that one, to warrant the loss of the contributor. The second comment, the compatible design of the replacement project will not meaningfully enhance the character of the historic district more than the retention of a part of the district's fabric dating to the period of significance. In other words, the replacement home cannot take the place of a contributor. The HPC went on to deny unanimously, the request to demolish. Councilman Najarian, 2 weeks ago, you based your decision on a decision by the TPC where you stated they are the experts, they are the ones we should be listening to, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I agree with the HPC. However, there is a caveat. Staff also stated that it is possible for the applicants to design a larger home while still maintaining the integrity of the contributing ranch-style home. You have a great architect. Mr. Olivares is a terrific architect. He can do anything with that structure, with that ranch-style home. You have a tremendous lot. It's huge. And you can do the biggest home that you want on that site that will be absolutely marvelous and fit with your family and what you want it to do. It seems to me that would be a win-win solution. And I know that from the meetings that I've watched and the hearings that I've watched, that no one is against you developing or renovating your home to become a larger home. It's just the integrity of the contributor that is of concern. This seems so in order to keep the integrity of this contributor home and the historic neighborhood, if you do that, if you develop that home, then you can retain the historic value of the neighborhood. The moral issue is who is harmed here. And I know, and my feelings go out to you because I know that you have been harmed in the fact that you've been misled. And yet I have to look at the entire community and who will be harmed more, where will the largest negative impact be? And I think that is on our community, because our community is going to lose the trust in this council and in the historic, in our intent to save our historic buildings, homes, and districts. And I value that trust. And I feel that because, number one, the appellant has no vested right to demolish, and because we must respect and we must follow the intent of the historic district guidelines, that I would deny the appellant to demolish and I would sustain the decision of the HPC.
Okay, thank you. There's no right answer, unfortunately. That's the situation we find ourselves in. Those aren't my words, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the words by Commissioner Arlene Vidor after she made her decision on the Yepez's home. No right answer. She even went further to state that there should be a complete moratorium on historic districts until we can figure out how to deal with individuals and homeowners and people who put their life savings into a piece of land and a home, just like the Yepez's. She knows it's unfair for people like that to be burdened with a historic district when there are not clear rules as to how their plans for a new home or an addition should be dealt with. Those are the words of well-respected Arlene Vidor. And this is what I was talking about. This was the News Press article thank you for Tom Lorenz for pulling it out. Brittany Levine reported that many of the members, when they made that unanimous decision, remarked that their decisions came with regret and reluctance. I think we've got a problem when a commissioner says we should have a moratorium on historic districts until we figure out how to deal with the unfairness and the equity issues that fall upon homeowners who in good faith go through the system, play by every single rule that the city puts before them, and have it dashed at the last minute. Now, we weren't sure why. There was some confusion as to why the hearing was yanked. Brittany Levine, in her article, of course it's a newspaper article, she didn't write this under oath, but says that after their application was deemed complete, neighbors and the Glendale Historical Society complained. And the day that the owners were set to have their plans go before the Design Review Board, the project was yanked from that commission's agenda. So, Mr. Garcia, you said you had no evidence that the Historical Society, which basically constitutes the members of the HPC, as well as someone on the DRB, had no input, according to Brittany Levine, that they were involved in this. No, thank you. Okay. I'm in my.
He's on a roll.
I'll just note
what did Rather Dong say? Don't interrupt me when I get started, or something. This is not going to be a slippery slope. This is not going to be an issue where home after home is going to be slated for demolition. This is one house that was in the middle of this pipeline analysis, this pipeline process, and they got, I think, treated unfairly. When you talk about equity, I think in that situation, the balance of equity goes to the homeowners who did everything they needed to do, who worked hand in hand with Jay Platt, who's not the easiest design staff member in the department, is he? He's very meticulous and he's very sensitive to the design issues, and we have spirited arguments every so often as well. So it's hard for me to put any fault on the Yeppeses in this. They've done everything that they needed to do. Now, when we talk about intent, it doesn't meet the intent. Well, I'll tell you what my intent was, and I was the one who voted on the guidelines. I was the one who voted on the historic district, and I've, by the way, like Mr. Weaver, have voted on every historic district that has come before this council. I believe preserving our historic resources are important. It was my intent not to get people like the Yeppeses caught in the middle of this when we lay this broad overlay zone on a neighborhood and all of a sudden decide, well, there's one person who was halfway through the door before we shut it on them. And I would have greatly desired to have known when we were voting on the overlay zone, the historic district, to be informed that, hey, by the way, there's this one house that's in the process. You guys should know something and do something about it. Because I'll tell you how I would have voted. I would have voted to exempt them from the HPC review and keep them under the Design Review Board process. That's what they signed up for. That's what they did. Now, the fact that they may have known that there were neighbors going around the neighborhood getting the signatures and they were doing a historic survey, that doesn't matter because it didn't become a law until 30 days after council voted on it. And it was not a sure thing by any chance unless someone is going around violating the Brown Act, finding out how each and every council member is going to vote and realize, hey, this is a done deal. We're going to get this thing through. So the fact that they realized there was activity does not in any way detract from their good faith in proceeding. As far as the CEQA arguments go, I'm going to have to defer to Ms. Nukian, and I presume that you shepherdized that case. They still call it shepherdized, or is that like a relic? In other words, check on the
still good case law.
Yes,
Mr.
make sure that that case that she cited regarding they were Section 3 exemptions, Class 3. The Class 3 exemptions still hold.
Yes, it is good law.
Okay. So I see that this house, whether or not the zone was in, and you said it doesn't matter whether the historic overlay zone was in force or not, whether their application was deemed complete or not, there still could be a CEQA analysis if it fell under the requirements, and it looks like under 2 or 3 of these analyses that it is an exempt project and not required. Do I feel bad? I mean, this looks like a ranch house to me, okay? And when to be quite honest, when I looked at the Brockmont district and thought there were beautiful homes there that deserved preservation, I have to be honest with you, it wasn't this ranch house with aluminum windows that I felt needed to be maintained. There are other beautiful homes in that area, and that's what touched my heart when I voted for the historic district, not a ranch house. I don't know if we have another slide of that. We're looking at the new home, and I think that new home is very much in line with the high quality and tasteful design that is displayed in the Brockmont overlay zone. And that's a house that I would be happy to have in this district and in any neighborhood in the city of Glendale. It certainly is what the city of Glendale reflects in terms of taste, quality, and design. This is the back. And look at this tennis court. That's a disgrace. They're back up to the house. This is a nondescript ranch home. I don't appreciate, when I say I don't appreciate, it means that its style doesn't move me and cry out to me as to something that should be maintained. This is a 1955 or 1954 home. We've got innumerable examples of this, and this isn't even the best example in the city of Glendale or in the Brockmont area. So I think we're bending over backwards to try and find something to save on this house. So based on those issues, the fairness to the homeowners, the intent when I personally voted on the overlay zone, and the CEQA issues, I'm going to support the appellant's request to overturn the HPC and to ask that all those commissions apply. However, there's 2 that were called out, 13 and 16. I'm going to ask that the architect and Mr. Platt work on those and see if there can be some consensus reached in the final design.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, one that I wanted in was that balcony, second floor.
That's number 13, I think.
11, I think.
11.
And if it's true, let me, I'm sorry, I had the number wrong. But if it is true that the neighbors on adjoining sides have no objection to that balcony, then I would be in favor of removing that condition.
I've checked, double checked. Even from the house, you could see
the other one.
They have a tiny bathroom window.
What was the other one?
Oh, there's 2 conflicting conditions.
Yeah,
Staff will take care of that.
If I may, just so we have a clear record, on condition number 11, that was one eliminate roof deck above carport to enhance privacy of adjacent neighbor. I would recommend that you give direct either to eliminate that, or, for example, Mr. Olivares asked that be a consideration but not a condition. It's another option to you, but not just leave it in there and leave it to staff.
Okay.
And
with the option that he can't, if they want. Staff should not be telling the architect they can't.
Yeah, okay, so it should be consideration.
That's consideration.
So change number 11 to a consideration.
And then the conflict will be worked out between the architect and staff. The other conditions.
Okay, if we could just add the condition that to number 13 that to the extent consistent with condition number 5, and then staff can work it out that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's things in there that are going to change. Some of the tile roof conditions, the chimney, overhang, the arch in the front, they're all in there. And talking to Mr. Olivares, he's comfortable with them, or he told us that.
So then, since you might make the motion, then what you're saying is you would move condition number 11 to a consideration, and then condition number 13 would read at the end, to the extent not inconsistent with condition number 5, as determined by staff, as determined by the director.
I'm moving 9A1 with those conditions, or whatever you want to call them.
Those conditions as revised.
Okay, I'm going to pass the gavel and second that motion. Take it back.
Leave it with her, and then I'll take roll call.
I should have grabbed it right away. Huh?
Okay, you got it. So you can call for.
You're not quick enough yet.
For roll call.
Roll call. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Devine.
No.
Friedman. Weaver.
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian. Mayor Pro Tem Najarian.
Yes.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you.
So
Next item.
For the record, that item passes.
Item passes.
12, under oral communications, 5 minutes. Discussion is limited to items not a part of the agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
I have one card from Margaret Hammond. Thanks for sticking around, Margaret. Thank you for your patience.
I'm part of the Glendale Historical. I was one of the founding members. I helped move the doctor's house up Bryan Boulevard. So I'm all for, the train station would have gone, but we fought for that. We fought for the Alex Theater, helped write the paper. I did. So anyway, my name is Margaret Hammond. So I do support the Glendale Historical. Sometimes there are things that are difficult to pass along. As a matter of fact, it was Elaine Wilkerson who was the first we got for the first historic district. I went to her, and that was when we started with historic districting. All right, first off, big news, flash, good news and bad news. The bad news first, Burger King no longer gives seniors a discount for their coffee. What? But good news is McDonald's still does, and there's a very nice McDonald's at 500 North Central. Beautiful, with marble floors, marble pillars, and they're very accommodating. They give you a nice hot cup of coffee, discounted. So anyway, have to tell that one. Bulky item, 818-548-3916. There are still mattresses, couches, and so forth laying around down where I live. Where you guys all live, you don't have any problem. Where I live, I have half the city of Glendale, 100,000 people below Colorado. So naturally, they're dumping mattresses and beds and whatever, and they don't get picked up the way they should. One of the things is, with employees leaving, the inspectors from the neighborhood services, they're down to 2 people doing inspections. So you have a real hard time. I think there used to be 10. And it's always the low guys that get hammered, I guess. But anyway, that's what it's down to. So it's very difficult to get people to come out and look at stuff. Not their fault, though. And then I'm back to double charging me and tenants for trash pickup. Now, I'm going to try and get a movement, if I can get enough apartment owners together, and say, don't take a bin from integrated waste anymore, because the city has to provide the barrels. And the tenants, the amount of money would not go up. They would still pay the same amount for the trash, that the charge pickup that they're charged on their electric bill. But I wouldn't have the cost of the bin anymore, which comes to several $100s a year. So, and in that way, maybe the city would realize they are getting money for nothing from the tenants, really, comes down to. And I am mad because I was double charged. I paid both the trash bin, and then when I had my apartment vacant, they turned around and charged me. And I think that's wrong completely. Now I'm back to the bicycle licenses. I still think they ought to be licensed. I think there should be training. I mean, we have nothing but, I had another one again. They come off the sidewalk going the wrong way and, against traffic, the whole thing. And if they knock you down, how are you going to find out who you're dealing with? At least if you have a license on their bicycle, you would have a number. And it's on the books of the city. There is an ordinance for the license, for the bicycles to be licensed. And it was a man from Sacramento that called me regarding the rules about the bicycles. They cannot ride on the sidewalk. That was the ruling. I've got it right here. He told me. I mean, he called me from Sacramento because I had called him to get the information. And he knew very well what he was talking about. He was no dummy. He had the book there from the DMV and read the whole thing out of the book. He didn't just dream it up. He actually had it right in front of him. So I have to take his word. By the way, the train station was one of the things that the Glendale Historical helped save and helped restore. And it is a terrific place to have parties. And the city is usually very, very grateful about allowing us, in the Adams Hill anyway, to use the train station. And it's really a neat place to have parties or anything like that. So, another great location for an event would be Departure, what is it out here? Huh?
Departure Plaza.
Yeah, I go. I'm late. It's too late for me. It's great. Nobody ever uses it. I think it would be a terrific place, and you could charge rent on that, and it is a really terrific location. They haven't done it since the Clean and Beautiful. We had our galas there, 3 or 4 years. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Margaret.
Bye.
My law office is located at that.
I know. I've been to your office.
So you call me anytime, Margaret. I'll buy you a senior coffee.
You'll come down and buy
I might even spring for a hot apple pie, too.
But I thought that was really crummy. Burger King has done it for years. And then I went in and they said, oh, no, we don't do that anymore. And I said, why not? Well, just something that they decided to do. But anyway.
Thank you, Margaret. Any comments?
Next. New business?
Okay, we are going to adjourn the meeting until next
this
Thursday,
October 16th, 6 p.m.
at the Pacific
Community Center.
Special
council meeting.
6 p.m.
Correct.
And this is part of the City Hall in your neighborhood meetings that we're going to be.
We need a motion.
Is there a motion to adjourn
until
I so move.
Until
special meeting
that date?
I so move.
Second.